And then over here. Record.
Yep. Remember. But you, please.
City of Color.
Maria Pacheco, City of Kermit.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Hi, ready for
How's that going?
It's so good.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Maybe I think.
Yeah.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
That's very interesting.
I think you got it.
Yeah, so it was,
I'm only there 3 years. Our terms are two years, and I term out at 2 years, so I just served for. I did chamber, and then I've been into. I wanted to get a transportation program going.
You can go home. We wait there long enough, everybody goes home. Right?
Got my transportation program and a lot of other things done, so it's all good. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. So, how you doing? Well?
I think you're doing good.
Good. Brian is running for example. Sorry to be able to go to the second.
Yes, yeah, so, things are slow for the public. I don't have a lot because of I jumped in, so I have to. Like, I wasn't ready to run, like, I was done.
Much different.
Yeah. So, to get all of my account, everything. So, it's slowing things down. So, it's gonna take me a little while. I think the beginning of January, everyone will really see a change to my campaign. And I feel like pretty surprised. Got a lot of big hitters. So, yeah, I'm gonna be okay.
So much, that is actually super. I don't want to think of resident
So I have a sliver, of urban Fresno from Bullard in 99 for Houston. So that little piece there on the west side of West End 99, and then doing a urban, down with the, Mendota and Tyra.
So large.
So the urban, and then for like the being.
Good. You stay here. Talking.
Hey,
How are you?
good.
Hey, look at that. It's fun to come on the bag.
Where are you?
I keep seeing it in the videos. Good back to that. Scary videos. Yeah.
So.
I was like, oh, he's there.
Yeah, I have to go to those.
Okay. But you're. Thank you. Thank you. So,
Oh,
yeah, it's nice to meet you. Good luck to your campaign.
thank you.
Get started.
All right, are we ready, guys? I think everybody's here. We're going to start with Fresno County Rural Transit Agency first. Give everybody an opportunity to sit. All right, so I think everyone is ready. All right, so let's start the meeting. Thursday, December 18th, 2025, and time is 5:32. Roll call, please.
City of Coalinga,
Here.
City of Fireball,
Present.
City of Fowler,
Present.
Fresno County,
Here.
City of Huron, City of Kerman,
Here.
City of Kingsburg,
Here.
City of Mendota,
He's here. I don't know where he went.
City of Orange Cove,
Get some food. Get a snack.
City of Parlier,
Here.
City of Reedley, City of Sanger, City of San Joaquin,
Here.
City of Selma.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. All right, Moses. Oh, is there any public presentations at this time? This is for FCRTA. Okay, hearing none, we can move on to the item, consent items. Is there any consent item that anyone would like to pull at this time? Any from the public? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion move.
Second.
Fireball and who's second?
Coalinga.
Kingsbury.
Oh, was it King?
Okay. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, we can move on. Moses?
Madam Chair, members of the board, just to let you know, this is my last board meeting with you tonight, and
No.
just want to thank you for all your support and empowering staff to do their job. And I believe that you folks all have a great mission for the rural areas and communities, and still a lot more to be done. FCRTA has accomplished a lot under your leadership. And just want to thank you for the past 14 years that you have empowered staff to do their job and then beyond. And we've made tremendous accomplishments, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And we'll be crossing paths as I will be moving on to the FCTA after a short one-day retirement starting January 1st, and look forward to working with all of you and especially on this renewal measure. So thank you very much. And just a small token of our appreciation, you have this in that wrapping paper, and it's wrapped for your safety. And do not throw it. It's not a Frisbee or a weapon. And it's just the FCRTA logo with the 3 different types of vans that we operate in the rural areas, and our established date of 1979. So again, thank you very much.
Moses, it's so like you to be giving us a gift at your now that you're leaving, and we should all be showering you with gifts and thanking you for the time and the leadership that you have shown all of us. And I just want to say, on behalf of the city of Kerman, on behalf of my constituents that benefit from public transportation, and especially from the students in the city of Kerman that get to benefit with a shuttle to Fresno City College and have access to higher education, and working with you even before my time as mayor. You sat with me at the table, and there was no change in the way that you interacted with me then, as just, a normal, person that was not an elected official, to my time as an elected official. And so to me, that just shows great integrity in the way that you lead, in the way that you interact with people. And you're such a genuine person. And I just want to thank you so much for all that you have done for the city of Kerman, my constituents, and myself. And I know that I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be as successful as I have been without our partnership. And so I just thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for everything. And I wish you the very best.
Thank you very much for those kind comments.
Is there anyone else that like?
I'd also like to say thank you for everything. Thank you on behalf of the city of Selma for that incredible maintenance facility. It was a 7-year odyssey that finally came to fruition this year. It's just paying off. We got a big plumbing wholesaler right down the street that came in, $40 million operation. It's attracting business. It's creating jobs. It's adding luster to the industrial park, and it's helping our county out. You're truly a hero for the county. We thank you, and we look forward to you coming out to our city in January to get your recognition. We'll see you there, and thanks for everything.
Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else? Well, we do have something for you, Moses. I concur with Mayor Pacheco. You know, you don't leave any city behind. You focus on the rural communities that are always at the end trying to reach, for a possibility of getting special projects into their communities. And you're always trying to find ways to bring something to the rural communities. And we do appreciate that. So I agree with Maria Pacheco that, there's so much that you have done for all of us and every city, not just, one. You focus on all of us, and that's what we appreciate. And I'm sure Janelle has learned a lot from you, and I'm sure she can do exactly and continue and moving forward with all the rural communities and the cities, of course, Fresno and Clovis, not leaving them behind. But, it's important for us to stay focused on the small communities that, do struggle for that. So on behalf of the FCRTA, we have this accessible EV mobility and infrastructure for all presented to Moses Sites in special recognition of your 14 years of service for the Fresno County Rural Transit Agency General Manager, for your outstanding leadership, and in sincere appreciation for your dedication and service, and recognizing your exceptional contributions and commitment. Presented by the Fresno County Rural Transit Agency Board of Directors, December 18th, 2025. And we will miss you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. You were speech.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you. And the good thing is that you're not leaving us too far. You're still with the FCTA. So that's another thing that I'm sure we're all going to appreciate you there too. Thank you. So other than that, I don't think we have any items from the members. Is there anything? No? Okay, so this meeting now is adjourned and we can move on to the next meeting, which is,
Can we get a picture before you move on?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, let's do that. Yeah, I think that would be great. So a 5-minute little break for pictures.
Someone from staff take it.
I think Brenda is doing it. I haven't even opened mine yet.
Photo op break.
Right.
Everybody's getting two. They gave us one already. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, we have. What am I gonna do with two of them?
You're part of the team. Come on, Mom. Lynn, Lynn, get up here. Lynn, get up here. Executive order.
I forgot my glasses. Which one of the cities went
Our last council meeting, our heat was on, so I had to wear the down for the whole meeting. We all had our puff jackets on. It was hilarious. But I think I had earmuffs. It's Selma, Alaska, the city council.
I turned around and it wasn't you, it was Denise, and I'm like, oh. Yeah, I was like, huh? I was like, hey.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
No, no Sanger? No Sanger? No Daniel? No Frank? Oh, couldn't be here. Go to your city. Go to the city meeting.
Yeah. The first Tuesday of the month. Second. Wow. Padre, no? No, no.
Yeah. Because I'm pretty sure there it is.
Uh, We're gonna get started in a couple of minutes. We're just making sure everybody's here. Especially since we'll be having a presentation. So is there anything before?
Just the consent.
Yeah, so then. We're just waiting. Sorry. Yeah, I don't see them.
Is it under guest? Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I'm wondering if this is either one of them, guest.
For a meeting now?
Think we'll get it going soon.
18.
There we go.
We're gonna have to look under here. Yes. Thank you. I just caught that right now. Yeah, I caught that right now.
We on Fresno?
I'm sorry?
We waiting on Fresno?
I don't know what they're waiting for. I have no idea.
They have a council meeting going on?
Yeah, it's a big thing around the southeast development area and
Wow.
a lot of protests and
Oh, wow.
been a few of those.
You can go from one meeting to another.
And that can go on and on. Got all the people coming, there's 50 people who want to speak.
50.
So I hope they limit to at least 2 minutes, not 3. Jeez. Be there all night.
No kidding. Be a late night or a little mayor.
Okay. What time is it? So.
Should have you go first rather than having to wait all day. They should.
Get our Caltrans update tonight, finally. Been a while.
Last month, Michael Navarro had to come for me.
Oh, yeah.
Said,
Didn't happen. No, too much.
I was texting him. I was during their board meeting.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
That was a late night.
All right. So, we're about to start. And I just wanted to make an announcement as far as once we start the presentation, we will wait for the presentation to be done. There will be a legal opinion from BBK. Once that's done, we have the board, open it up for the board for discussion. Once the board is done with the discussions, then I will bring it out to the public for the public to have input or comments, and then bring it back to the board for a vote. So just want to make sure that you guys know that we're going to work on the presentation and let the presentation flow and all the information. If there's anything that you want to write down that you may have a question on, jot it down, and then when we open it up, you can ask those questions. So it is for Fresno COG Policy Board, December 18th, 2025. Time is 5:50. Roll call, please.
City of Clovis. City of Coalinga.
Here.
City of Firebaugh.
Here.
City of Fowler.
Here.
City of Fresno. City of Huron. City of Kerman.
Here.
City of Kingsburg.
Here.
City of Mendota.
Here.
City of Orange Cove. City of Parlier.
Here.
City of Reedley.
Here.
City of Sanger. City of San Joaquin.
Here.
City of Selma.
Here.
Fresno County.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you.
For the record, City of Fresno will be here in about 15 minutes.
Thank you. So, did we start? Okay. Okay, so there's a consent item anybody wants to pull at this time? Anybody from the board? Hearing none. Any from the public? Okay, Hearing none, so do we have a motion to approve the consent?
Fireball, I'll move. Second that.
Fowler and Mendota, all those in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, I said Fowler, it's Fireball.
It's Fireball.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, let's move on to the next item. And that is Measure C. The Measure C, Robert?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone. And before I get too far into this, I did want to take a moment to thank everybody in this room. We have several members of our steering committee here. We have several members of our technical staff, our technical transportation committee, some of our city managers, our policy advisory committee members, your board, of course, all of whom have been involved in over a year-long affair now to put this measure together. It has been an arduous journey, and tonight we bring to you what is anticipated to be the final expenditure plan, subject to legal review, of course, that we're going to be going through. We've had our disagreements, we've had our areas of agreement, but what we know is that everyone has invested a tremendous amount of time, and I wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight and for the time and effort that you have put into this measure and to your communities and to our region as a whole. My wife accused me the other day of having multiple affairs, but she can't track them because every one of them is named Mayor, except for the couple who are called, I call supervisor, and that really makes her mad because that's her job. So with that, 16 meetings, 16 steering committee meetings that began in April, and here we are today. So what you have before you, multiple attachments, a proposed expenditure plan that, like the two measures before it, the two iterations before it, continues to evolve as it has for nearly 40 years. This one placing a much greater emphasis on local street and road maintenance and public transportation, with less of that, an emphasis or focus on the large capital projects. We have received more than 20 pages of comments on the implementing guidelines, which are also attached to this report, as is the red line version of the guidelines and the PowerPoint presentation that you'll see tonight. So the intent behind the PowerPoint, just to kind of frame that for you, this is what we did at both the, or at the steering committee, the TTC and the PAC, is to start off with the comments that received, or excuse me, the issues within the guidelines that received the most comments, and kind of go from there. I will go through the entire presentation, and then we'll circle back around and deal with these, as I understand it, one at a time. As I mentioned, this is still subject to legal review, but we do have some initial thoughts from our legal team on this that you'll hear tonight as well. So again, notably, I did want to point out, while this, the guidelines that are before you received a majority vote at the steering committee on December 11th, neither of our two standing committees, the Transportation Technical Committee nor the PAC, voted to support the steering committee's recommendations for the guidelines. There were several provisions to which they objected and found them to be too prescriptive, lacking in accuracy and consistency, and they generally indicated that the guidelines needed more time to be fully vetted. Among their concerns, the provision that recreational trails being considered ineligible for expenditures, language revolving around adoption of an active transportation plan as the criterion for whether small jurisdictions are subject to the 120-mile requirement for Class 1 and Class 4 bike and pedestrian facilities, language relative to the minimum 65% PCI metric for all roads by jurisdiction relative to accessing funds for widening or capacity increasing projects, the 12 to 15% set aside from the County of Fresno's funds for disadvantaged unincorporated communities, the request to retain vehicles for surveyors and engineers is an eligible expenditure, the request to revise public transportation
a public transportation metric calling for rural trip durations to have, quote, comparable travel times to personal vehicle use. An objection to the requirement that every roadway using Measure C funding include at least minimum improvements for bicycle travel, and concerns over the allocations amounts for the administration and regional connectivity categories. Together, the implementing guidelines and the vote that you took last month on the category allocations comprise the completed expenditure plan. That's how we're looking at this. Historically, all of this has been handled with a single vote. We have kind of parsed it up, if you will, over a couple of different meetings. Again, the marked up version is attached to this report. It does include some minor clarifying revisions that the TTC PAC members had pointed out, such as the requirement to reach the minimum 65 pavement condition index, PCI, for every road in the jurisdiction prior to accessing any funding for widening. So we're gonna go through all this, or adding restriping bicycle lanes as an eligible maintenance expense. So that is to say, there are minor tweaks that staff that were kind of very technical in nature that staff determined it could make on its own, that did not rise to the level of policy issues. And with that, I guess we can go ahead and get started on the PowerPoint. So again, I will go through the PowerPoint. I'll try and make this relatively quick, and then we'll bring it back to the chair. Okay, so we start with, nope, go back for me. There we go. We start with the guiding principles. So the implementing guidelines are based in the guiding principles that were adopted way back in, I think it was May. Fixing what matters most, keeping people safe. I won't read all of these, but you see what the intent was, the basis for all of the guidelines. This is what your steering committee felt these were the principles upon which the measure should be founded. Next slide. You'll recall that last month you took a vote on the categories, the category allocations. So these are the percentages of the $7 billion over 30 years that you agreed to fund. This was the recommendation from the steering committee that was approved. Next slide. Okay, so now we get into the specific issues that have been raised, both with the comments that we received generally, the 20 pages that are attached to the report, as well as the comments that came from the TTC and PAC. The first one, the one that garnered the most comments, had to do with the 120 miles of new bike trail facilities, Class 1 or Class 4 by 2057, as identified by the Active Transportation Plan, with a split of 70-30. That has been refined now. The TTC PAC made the point that using the Active Transportation Plan as the criterion by which it should be decided who would be included in this requirement was not going to work, because anytime a jurisdiction adopted the Regional Active Transportation Plan, they were in effect holding themselves liable for this requirement. So we have changed the language to note that point, so that now the 70-30 split is between the urban metropolitan statistical areas at 70%, 84 miles between Fresno and Clovis, and 36 miles for the county of Fresno. However, any Class 1 or Class 4 facilities that any of the incorporated jurisdictions outside the metro area construct could be counted toward the county's 36-mile requirement. So that is the language that is in the guidelines as of tonight. For safe routes to schools, so the green indicates the language as is being used now. Safe routes to schools approved using the same 70-30 formula split for the annual requirement for 5 projects annually, 50 projects over the course of 10 years that would have to be verified over that time. There is no provision right now for how that is to be divided. That will have to come through the strategic implementation plan that would be developed later. Next slide. Okay, there had been a goal to reduce vehicle miles traveled. There were concerns and objections to that. That has now been adjusted to read Fresno County region will have the goal of reducing GHG emissions as opposed to VMT as prescribed by targets established quadrennially through the Air Resources Board. We deal with that here at Fresno COG through our Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy right now. Rural trail design. The steering committee added at its last meeting that rural trails built strictly for recreational purposes are ineligible for Measure C funds. Also under rural trail design, new language that Class 1 bikeways in rural areas that link rural communities and or cities shall be built in accordance with the California Highway Design Manual, Chapter 1000, bikeway planning and design. That's simply consistent with other provisions in the guidelines. And then providing for complete streets elements on all category projects. We've adjusted that language to include that these elements are included where feasible. Next slide. This one also received a lot of comments, 70% average, 65% minimum PCI requirement on all existing neighborhood roads before 5% of funds for capacity expansion may be accessed. I did want to pause for a moment on this one because there seems to be some confusion about this. What this is saying is that of the existing streets and roads category, 5% is set aside for widening and capacity expansion. Before that 5% can be accessed, all roads in a jurisdiction must meet a minimum of 65% PCI. The jurisdiction must have an average of 70% PCI. So it does not exclude widening. It simply says that before the widening funds may be accessed, those criteria must be met first, except there are certain exemptions, as it says in green, for capacity expansion projects under very specific circumstances, which are delineated. Those projects that demonstrate significant safety or mobility benefits as supported by traffic studies that demonstrate reductions in fatalities and serious injuries for all road users. Those projects include dedicated or protected Class 1 or Class 4 facilities, dedicated transit lanes, or safety-motivated turn lanes or intersection improvements that benefit all road users and that do not impede bicycle or pedestrian facilities. Okay, next slide. There had been a in the previous draft, there had been a requirement of minimum of 7% annual expenditure requirement on disadvantaged unincorporated communities for the county of Fresno. That language, based on the steering committee vote on December 11th, now reads the county of Fresno is annually required to spend a minimum of 12 and up to 15% of its local allocation in identified disadvantaged unincorporated communities as defined by Government Code 65302.10. The specific percentage within this range will be determined by a needs assessment of complete streets with the following implementing provisions. The county shall complete a DUC and needs feasibility assessment by January 1st, 2029, and the county may spend any remaining funds set aside for DUCs in other county areas once those identified needs have been met and the average PCI for all DUCs reaches 70. So this applies only to the county, and this shall be evaluated every 10 years. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, a provision that would have included vehicles and equipment for engineers and surveyors as eligible expenditures under this category was removed. And then an expanded definition of mixed income development that was restricted by affordability was also changed. As you can see on the screen there, this is the new language that was included, which introduces AMI language. Lower income is defined as 80% AMI and includes low income, 50 to 80% AMI, very low income, and extremely low income. Also, there was previously ineligible bicycle and pedestrian facility maintenance expenses that are now eligible, such as pavement resurfacing, water, electricity, and signage have been included as eligible maintenance expenses under this category. Next slide. Okay, so that's everything for the existing streets and roads category. Now we're moving into public transportation comments and how those were addressed. A requirement for 15-minute frequencies in urban areas has been adjusted to now read 15-minute frequencies in urban areas based on high frequency demand, substantial public input, and I guess that should be or potential high ridership. For rural areas, comparable travel times to personal vehicle use now reads for rural vehicles, comparable travel times to personal vehicle use or a similar metric to be developed as part of the strategic implementation plan. Enhanced accessibility by reducing average distance or time it takes to get to a bus stop. And now, instead of a bus stop, it says time it takes to get to more destinations. Next slide. An increase in microtransit and on-demand transit services across the county has been adjusted to say as determined by each public transportation provider. Similarly, reduced travel time by reducing the average trip duration now specifies from origin to destination. Improving public transit supportive infrastructure by increasing the number of bus stops that meet ADA accessibility standards now says as required by local, state, and federal law, and assuming that the right-of-way for those is available to support. Next slide. Increase in the proportion of multimodal access points that are ADA compliant and increase bicycle, sidewalk, and pedestrian facility infrastructure leading to bus stops. Now says as required by local, state, and federal laws where possible. An increase in accessibility to schools, population centers, employment centers, and other services with multiple modes of transportation. There is no change in the language. Increased opportunities for community residents' participation, Representative Fresno County's geographic and demographic characteristics. Now says following federal Title VI reporting and documentation and languages of study areas. Next slide. Under program implementation, a requirement for each public transit agency to have developed and adopted an updated short-range service plan by January 1st, 2030. Now has that requirement at January 1st, 2029, and specifies how Measure C, and it should say other federal and state dollars will be used to promote system connectivity and accessibility, close service gaps, and improve and may expand service levels and ensure coordination of services across the three agencies. Okay, next slide. And then finally, I think this is the last one here. Before Measure C funds are allocated to public transportation agencies within the county, the authority, meaning the Fresno County Transportation Authority, must ensure sufficient revenues are available for continued support to paratransit, curb-to-curb van, taxi, and other transportation services for seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities who are unable to use fixed route transit service. There is no change to this language. Next slide. Okay, for regional connectivity. In the aggregate, we had requests to increase the regional connectivity program allocation, a question about whether the state highway system is prioritized over county roads in this category, and questions or a question about whether 6 additional public use airports should qualify for regional connectivity funding, but there have been no changes in this category. Next slide. Under access and innovation, the next category, more funding may need to be devoted here in the future, which is another reason to officially review the allocations at the 10-year mark. Low cost zero fares should be under the access and innovation category, and then carpool van pool programs should be listed under public transportation, not access and innovation. So those last two bullets have been corrected so that low cost zero fares is now listed under access and innovation. Carpool van pool is under public transportation. Next slide, please. We received multiple broad comments on the roles, function, and selection process of Measure Oversight Committee members, as well as its meeting process, and multiple comments that the 1% allocation for the administration category was insufficient relative to its increased requirements. So no changes to the 1% allocation, but we do have new language that the steering committee requested addressing FCTA, developing a fraud detection and whistleblower policy to be distributed on its website with findings published every 2 years, a new requirement for oversight committee members to meet at least quarterly, and new language regarding potential for fraud concerns to be turned over to the DA's office, the state attorney's office, or any other appropriate local or state federal agency for potential prosecution as circumstances dictate. Okay, next slide. Okay, I guess that's it. So that is the presentation. As I mentioned, the action tonight is to recommend that this be approved subject to legal review. That legal review is ongoing, but we do have some initial comments from our legal team with Best and Krieger. Steve and Jeremy, are you on?
Yes, we are on.
Yes.
Thank you. So, yeah, thank you. We've, as the executive director mentioned, we recently received this draft, and so we've not had a chance to fully review the document. However, we do have concerns that the guidelines themselves need to better define what the role of the guidelines
Okay,
are.
Steve and Jeremy?
Yes, you can't hear me?
us?
I can hear you. You can't hear me?
Bless you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Robert, can you hear me? Uh-oh. Robert? Robert?
We're having a
Hello?
little bit of technical
It's on
issues
there.
right now.
Okay, yeah, they can't hear us. Yeah.
Steve and Jeremy, if you can hear us,
Testing.
it shows that you have access on our end to speak.
Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Can you see my thumb? You can't see my thumb. No, you can't hear me, huh? Can you see us? Well, they can't see us because they can't answer that question.
Okay, they're saying they can hear. I've got people texting saying they can hear online.
Just not going into the room.
Yeah. Sure.
Steve, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Yep.
Okay. He
Oh, you got us?
He can hear us. We can't hear him.
Yeah.
It might be a microphone issue.
Microphone?
Try changing it to the USB bridge. Try changing the mic to the USB bridge.
Mm.
Echo canceling speakerphone. Yeah. Yeah. No, the one below it. Yeah. Right.
Man, these guys are so.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear
Yep.
me?
Okay, there we go. Now we
All
got.
There we
right.
go.
Great. Okay. Good.
Sorry about that.
No
Apologies.
worries at all. So, I'll start again. I hadn't gotten very far. As your executive director mentioned, we recently received the draft that's before you today, and we've not had a chance to fully review the documents. However, based on our review so far, we believe that the guidelines need to better define their goal and their purpose, their goal and their purpose in order to in order to support enforceability. Guidelines are typically intended, at least in my experience, to express goals and recommendations. But the current version of the guidelines are very prescriptive and reads more like a specific set of requirements that must be met. The number of the specific requirements, I can certainly understand why there's a desire to to include a number of specific requirements. However, that makes it very difficult to harmonize the document. I do believe there are areas where it's just not clear how the various provisions fit together, and also requires that if there's any changes in the future, it has to be go through the expenditure plan amendment process. Because the requirements in the guidelines are numerous and highly detailed, I believe as it's currently written, they create a risk of political and legal disputes, particularly if the FCTA seeks to enforce compliance through withholding funds or other mechanisms that are listed in the implementation agreement. This level of specificity makes the documents function less as guidelines and more as enforceable regulations, which I think will cause the FCTA problems down the road. To address this concern, I suggest that the guidelines should include clear language stating that they are goals to be implemented by the FCTA through the SIP or other regulations once the measure is approved by the voters. The specific measures included in the guidelines can then be implemented by the FCTA through a set of requirements tailored to each expenditure plan program, which would preserve the flexibility while ensuring appropriate oversight. So, in sum, we have concerns with the guidelines being so prescriptive that that there will be both inconsistencies within the document, and we've already identified a number of them, and also create issues with enforcement if in fact the FCTA tries to enforce it. And my recommendation is that that at least language be included in the document, which makes it clear that these are guidelines, these are goals, and that they are not specific requirements that can be enforced either by the FCTA or frankly by a taxpayer lawsuit that claims that the FCTA is not properly enforcing the requirements of the guidelines. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, we can open it up for the board. Go ahead.
Yeah, I understand, what you're trying to say about being prescriptive and to a point strict on the guidelines, but at the same time, I do see the need for accountability and having these, metrics. It's very important because this will ensure that cities like Mendota don't get bypassed with that big project like 180 was promised to the community. $100 million saved on that thing right there that never happened.
Well, I think maybe that's at a different level, and I apologize that I'm not specifically aware of that particular project, but the type of requirements that I'm concerned with that are in the documents or provisions. There's a provision under required metrics that says the average payment condition index for each jurisdiction shall be 70, including arterials, collectors, and neighborhoods. There's also other language in the agreement in the document that talks about the arterials and collectors need to be 65 rather than 70. Now I can see maybe how those can be read together, but that first requirement doesn't have a timeline on it. Is that immediately? How is that supposed to be implemented, or is that merely a goal? It's language like that which
But I
concerns
think
me.
that's a target that we can pursue, right? There needs to be something there rather than nothing. Or we
Well,
can be more strict saying by this day you need to have 70%. That's the other option too. I'd rather have something there that, we can work towards that and get something done. Because if you just leave it vague, so what are the options, right? Either you define it more or you make it more loose.
well, We could. We haven't gone through each provision and crafted it or revised it to identify or to tweak it to take out any ambiguity. We could do that. That's going to take some time. Um, or we could simply state that these are guidelines so that there's definitely, or goals. There's a goal to have the PCI at 70, but not
I
stated as
agree.
a
I
requirement.
agree of having that level of accountability, and I disagree with, with your suggestion. I
Okay.
respectfully disagree with that, but I think we need to have some sort of level of accountability. It goes back again, guys. It goes back to our communities, and we have history and we have facts, and we can go one by one in every single city, not just the rural communities. We can back.
I understand. It is definitely your document.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just providing a suggestion.
Thank you, Dyer.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your review and advice, as always. And I think the question is, what we have is how can we assure that how can we assure voters that the jurisdictions that are being funded with certain dollars, that they're spending those dollars in the manner in which the voters approved. And the reason I say that is uh, I go to a lot of places and I hear from people that we spent all this money on Measure C, but our roads are still terrible. And so there is this belief out there that we haven't spent money appropriately. So the intent was not necessarily to be prescriptive, but to provide some guidelines, some very stringent guidelines, so that people would spend the money in the appropriate way. And so the question is, how do we establish thresholds to ensure that money is being spent on neighborhood roads and not road widening and the like, which is how the money's been spent in the past. And I think the real question I have is this document legal? And what you're providing us, is it advice or what?
I understand your concern. There is nothing illegal about this document, or the guidelines. I have concerns once it is approved and should the tax be operative, once you're living with this document as specific rules, that it will be difficult to implement, and it could also lead to disputes, certainly between the FCA and the various members. But are you breaking the law, or is this going to make the tax invalid? No, it will not.
Got it. Yeah. And I appreciate that because, we all in our respective jurisdictions, we have city attorney's office as our county attorney and their advisory. And sometimes we just say, what's the risk of us doing it this way versus what's the risk of doing it another way? And then ultimately that risk falls upon the board. And so I think that's what we're looking for. How can we ensure monies are being spent in the appropriate manner without making something a measure null and void?
Sure. I understand. And you guys have the hard job. We just get to provide suggestions.
Don't we have in the current measure some restrictive, like there's guidelines that are very precise as well, isn't it? They have, if they have it in the current measure, then it shouldn't be an issue with a new measure, right?
And I think, only the people that would know that, quite frankly, like Scott Mosier, my Director of Public Works, he could probably stand up if you'd like and tell you some of the things that are in the existing measure that are very prescriptive to the point of being restrictive.
How will we be able to measure that going on over the many, many, many years that this measure is in place? So how are we going to know? Are we going to have a yearly survey to let us know when or how those goals are being met? And then, what about equity? Because there's some cities, the city of San Joaquin, and the city of Huron that have very low scores. And so then will we then start with the lowest scores and then work our way up? How is that exactly that we get to that number?
Yes, go ahead.
To attempt to answer that, the first question, in terms of accountability and how that's measured, there are, right now you have an oversight committee that reviews effectively audit forms. There are performance audits forms that are submitted by the cities every year. And what we envision is those audit forms are just going to kind of grow, essentially. So the requirements that are not included now in the current measure would have to be included in the forms that are submitted, for the new measure. So it's going to be, a bit more of a load on each jurisdiction to report every year, right? So it's an annual reporting that goes to the oversight committee that's reviewing those forms, okay? And then in addition to that, there are milestones that are built into the guidelines for like 10-year reviews to determine whether we're, and also 5-year, depending on the program. There are also 5 and 10-year review points for check-ins, essentially, to determine whether the metrics are being met. So, for example, safe routes to schools are those, are the average of 5 safe routes to school projects each year being met at the 10-year mark? Do we have, after 10 years, have we had 50 projects that are being met? That's discussed in these. Similarly, so there's a major review and potential for major amendments every 10 years that is built into the guidelines. But on an annual basis, each jurisdiction would be required to report annually to the Citizens Oversight Committee that's reviewing these forms for efficacy and to ensure that all of this is being handled correctly. The FCTA would be in charge of that as well. So the FCTA would be empowering and backing the Citizens Oversight Committee with resources, but would also be in a position of, levying any restrictions, such as a withholding of funds were they not meeting the goals and so forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in regards to the equity versus
So the equity, the issue of equity in terms of kind of the worst first approach. So that is that is approached in a couple of different ways. Probably most directly through the PCI issue that we discussed, where 5% of the existing streets and roads category is earmarked and only 5% for widening capacity increasing. But before you can access that, each road in a jurisdiction must reach a minimum of 65% PCI, and the overall average for the jurisdiction must be at 70.
Okay.
So that's one example.
Like Kerman's going to be like, hey, San Joaquin, come on. Like, so we
and then there are
numbers we can.
Right. And then there are other equity related measures in there that are more specific to the county, such as the 12 to 15% that is the county is directed to spend out of its allocation for DUCs specifically.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for answering my question. I appreciate it.
Let's not forget that there's also exemptions in the one for the 65% PCI. Only safety, right? Go ahead.
Yeah. First off, I want to thank everyone for all the work they've done. There was 20 pages full of comments that people submitted. And I've seen some very creative ways to include a lot of these. And I'll have to say that, I've learned recently that 2 things can be right at the same time. So I agree with the attorney's assessment, and I also agree with Mr. Martinez's assessment as well. And so I think that, unfortunately, because of the instance of time, that we feel like we're rushed and that we would have to make a decision based on either allowing it to put in language that would make it completely flexible, which would include taking out instances where it says requirement. And I don't think that that's the way to do this. I think it should be at a scalpel level. And I think For instance, the PCI requirement is one where I would say I would like that to be, not so rigid. Because city of Coalinga, we may never get there. So then we will never going to be able to access the 5% of the funds ever. So like a lot of the towns that have a lot of road work to do, there's not enough money in the entire bill to do it. Not even the entire 30 years. We're not going to get it. I'm telling you right now, not even with the entire money is there enough to take all of our roads to where they need to be. So if we set a hard line on this and say that the requirement, which let me tell you, I want us to be at 70%. I do. I'd love us to be at 65 or 70. But in some cities, I mean, with the price of roads, it's not possible. We replaced one little piece of road, and it was $700,000. That's, yeah, right. Like we have roads that are in such bad condition in a lot of places. It's so in this exact place, I'd like to remove that word requirement and I'd like to change it to something else. But wouldn't say that, like, hey, let's change the thing on requirement to every single thing, starting with the metrics, because I think that takes away from the definition of the document. There are some places in here though that I do think that we could modify in order to make it a little bit more, and are we talking about the whole document right now? Or are we just talking about okay, so the other section that I look at, and this is near and dear to me because of the fact that we have some of these locations near us, is the amount that the county is going to be required to spend on the DUC areas. Well, I know how these DUC areas have popped up. A lot of times people grab a piece of land, they start a community that wasn't there. It never existed before. And then they come around to the counties and they say, hey, you need to provide us water. You need to provide us roads. The county's already been taking a lot of the money out of their system. And now we're going to make them require 12 to 15% for the DUCs. I think that's a lot. I think that's a large jump. I'd like to see that not be that. And maybe this is another where you can change required to some kind of goal where they want to get to that point. But I don't think it's fair that people just pop and squat wherever they are, because this happens. I see it happen. They're in a rural area, they get an area, they get one person there, then two, then three, and then you have 15. And then all of a sudden they want a road and they think the county should pay for it. And the county's, I mean, I've asked for this information before and the county's like, hey, that wasn't even in our plan to build a road here. And a lot of the folks are non-participants when it comes to paying. They're using that as a place to have a trailer or to have, and so I just think that areas like that could be another place where you could see the required moved into a different type of language. If we're going to go local jurisdiction may use existing neighborhood streets and roads funding program to support transportation, all costs to enable housing in mixed use zone districts. The jurisdiction shall ensure the developments are mixed. And then it says pavement, resurfacing, water, electricity, and signage. I don't see that is fixing roads. I mean, am I correct in thinking that they're going to be using roads money for water and electricity and signage? Is that what this says or no? Am I reading this wrong?
No.
Okay, what does it say? Because it says previously ineligible.
Let me have Robert clarify that.
Okay.
Yeah. What I'm sorry, what page?
What
are we
page?
Well, it doesn't really have page numbers on what I'm looking at here. It's on the PowerPoint, and it's under the section existing neighborhood roads, comment disposition.
Oh, this is the PowerPoint?
Yes.
PowerPoint should have a reference, does it not?
Yes.
It says page 21.
There.
Yeah.
Right.
Which might be.
Okay, so this is under bicycle and pedestrian facilities maintenance. And the issue is what is defined as ongoing maintenance. And so the point that's being raised in the PowerPoint is that there were expenses that were considered previously ineligible that were requested in the comments as to be considered eligible.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those are included pavement resurfacing, installing or replacing signage, restriping any median lines, restriping of bicycle and pedestrian facilities, paying for the cost of water or electricity, and maintenance at adjacent trailheads or parks.
So that's not in there then?
That has been added. Those have been added as eligible expenses.
Ineligible.
Eligible. They were previously ineligible. They have been added as eligible expenses by virtue of the comments we received.
So that's something that I just personally think like we should stick to streets. I don't think that should be something that should be in there. I think that the money shouldn't be used to, as it reads, a local jurisdiction may use existing neighborhood streets and roads program funding to support transportation or other costs to enable housing in mixed use zone districts within existing neighborhoods. Like, I don't know how that jumps from one place to the other again. That's just another comment that I have. I'll go through these real quick because I just highlighted a couple. So I'm very sensitive to the fact that we need, you know, transportation for the disabled, the veterans, and the people that are older. But here's another section where we could make some adjustments in language. And this is on page 26. And it says, before Measure C funds are allocated to public transportation agencies within Fresno County, the authority must ensure sufficient revenues are available for continued support for paratransit, curb to van, taxi, and other transportation for seniors 62 and older, and all that. So my question is, in Kalinga specifically, we looked at some of these services and we expressed last time that we're here looking at these, that some of those services for a mile, for a ride that was under a mile, was costing $42. So does this right here, does that guarantee that we have to continue providing services at that rate? Or does this mean that we could, you know, just, it has to be there? It's like, could a micro transit or something like that replace this? And does that have to be in place before we would move on to something else?
I think, well, based on what I've read in the conversations I've had, the intent is to, yes, you could use microtransit for that versus the current system, which causes you, I don't think there's anything in this measure that makes us, causes us to want to continue to be inefficient in that arena. So I think, I mean, it's a valid point, but yes, microtransit would be available.
Perfect.
Yeah, the intent is to introduce other potential forms of transit. So, for example, in a more rural area, instead of, you know, I think the thought, without wanting to put words in people's mouths, it's my understanding that the intent is instead of running a 30-foot bus, you may be able to get by with a microtransit service, for example. But that would be the way that the language is worked now, or is written now. That would be basically at the discretion of the transportation provider. They would have to determine what the most cost-efficient way of doing that, of meeting those goals are.
Yeah, and one last comment that I want to make here is that I think one very important thing that it's in the guidelines there is that revisions, right? Every 10 years. If something is not functioning correctly, that's why they are there, so that we can, you know, make some changes.
Yeah, and there's a lot of work that's been done in here. And I just want to thank everybody for the work. I just want to get some clarification because, you know, moving forward with this, we want to just make sure it's something that we understand and that we can, you know, tell our communities about. And I think there's a lot of things that out of those 20 pages, I read and I used some AI and I looked and I summarized, and there's actually quite a bit that has changed in here. And so I appreciate everyone that's here, that is people that are on the steering committee and everyone that put in time to make that happen. So that's it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Paul?
Yeah, I
Thank
wanted
you.
to go back to what BKK was talking about. Sir, if the language in our guideline is such that we'll be vulnerable to potential lawsuits and difficulty in implementation, is that true regardless if we bring the measure or if a citizens group brings a measure, that it'll, because it's the same guideline or potentially same guidelines, it'll still have those vulnerabilities?
If the citizens group includes these guidelines in their expenditure plan, then yes.
Okay. And then is there a way to make it where those who are involved, there's a dispute resolution clause? Does that help it at all, where we will not sue each other or use it as a tool to sue one jurisdiction versus another, but have it where we actually have some internal resolution? So that way we're not always running to the courts because we're thinking Clovis is misusing its funds. Would that help?
Yeah,
with the
I think that would
litigation?
help. I think that's a good idea. I think that would help avoid the disputes among members. You'd have to, you have to come up with a mechanism that, is robust enough to be able to come up with, helpful decisions. You have to figure out who your arbitrator would be, but I think that would help.
And then but it doesn't leave us protected from a third party.
It certainly does not.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I have a concern with that PCI language, for instance, that a third party, a citizen, could decide to bring a citizen lawsuit saying, oh, my roads, the average roads in my jurisdiction are in 70. You're not complying with it, on day one. I mean, it's not going to happen, but I mean, that's the kind of sort of crazy lawsuit that if there's somebody out there who wants to cause problems, that they could bring.
And then my last question is, if we change these to all goals, can we put language in here that requires the governing body who implements this to make their, I don't know what we'll call them now, but where it's now a measurable or very prescriptive. So in other words, these can be goals, but it'll direct the governing body to go, but you're going to make these very strict in that, I guess maybe the SIP or whatever it is, but where it's automatically changes to where the governing body who's overseeing it has the restrictions that we want in this current document.
Yeah, that's something that we thought about, and I do think that's that's an approach that you can make, and it also puts it also makes it less of a it makes it it, it makes it such that changes can be made, in the requirements rather than including the implementation agreement and the implementation guidelines that goes before the voters. That's a very difficult to to um, to change. You have to go through a specific process. But my recommendation would be um, to direct or request, or however you guys feel comfortable, the FCTA to include um, include these goals in the SIP as requirements, or something along that line. I haven't thought specifically what the language would be, but yes, I think that would help.
And I just wanted to answer Kolinga's question with regards to the 5%. You don't lose the 5%. You can access the 5% if your roads are already at 65. So if your roads aren't good, you're going to use all the monies anyway. So in other words, it's not a set aside. So it's all there for roads. And if your roads are good enough, you can take your roads allocation to the 65% and actually do it for expansion. That's what it reads as. So it's not really
up to the 5%.
pot. Yeah. So it's not really a pot that you're not going to access. So I just want to make that clear. Yeah. So,
and there are exemptions that allow you to access that 5% early, right?
Do we have any other comments from the board? Yeah.
I have a question, I guess a comment and a question. It seems like TTC and PAC and now legal have some pretty substantial concerns, whether it's language, the way that it's worded, whatever. Is there a rush to do this to where it's like we're finalizing this tonight, or is this something we can kick back to really clean up all these issues? It's a long measure and it's billions of dollars. I don't like anything being hastily put together. And I know that there's been a lot of time, but this last kind of point has come down. And I say that not, if I'm being honest, a lot of this I don't understand. I rely on experts for this. And my experts that have sat through these are telling me that they need more time. And my understanding is a lot of the reason it didn't pass was because they needed a little bit more time. Not because they disagree with it, but just to make the small changes to make sure it's right, because it's so much money. Are we in a rush tonight to pass this as it sits?
I think we have some clarification on the concerns that they had. So Robert, did you want to go over a little bit or Dyer? Robert? Yep.
Well, only to, yeah, that the, again, this is going to be subject to legal review. So the legal review, as I mentioned, is ongoing. There are tweaks that we do anticipate making to this, but those tweaks are going to be technical in nature. So, you know, we are working to clarify where we have identified, and some of, as I mentioned in the earlier presentation, some of those points that TTC PAC made have already been adjusted, okay? However, a lot of the comments that came out of TTC PAC are really kind of policy level issues that we are not suited to address because those were positions that were taken by the steering committee, and that has to be addressed by the board. So as to the rush, you know, it depends on the timelines of all the partners. We are in a collaboration here. And so we are working to address if you follow the original timeline that was kind of approved way back in June, we're already about 2 months behind that at least. And so that's what we're trying to address tonight, and to get closure on that. But of course, that's always up to your board.
If I could just add to that quickly, if we're talking about legal making tweaks to the document to try to ensure clarity and the like, I'm comfortable with doing that. If we're talking about making, you know, policy type changes or broad changes to the document, I would not want to be in that role. And I don't think Robert is suggesting, or your executive director is suggesting that that's the case, but I want to make that clear. That's not my role.
So, my last one, I guess, I don't know who, Robert or BBK. With the potential liabilities based on some of these things, as this measure goes on and this goes to court, who's paying these legal fees? Where does that money come from? Is that coming from the measure? Or is that coming from a different source? Who pays the attorneys?
Well, for example, the BBK contract is coming out of out of FCTA funds, for which we're in a cooperative agreement with FCTA. So it is coming out of measure funds right now. Going forward, from my perspective, essentially, were the guidelines to be approved tonight. The next administrative step, you know, on our part, would be to go out and get approval of this by jurisdiction. But in terms of developing the implementation plan, the strategic implementation plan that is cited several times in the document, that's going to be an FCTA issue. So the first line of defense, as I understand it, would be FCTA.
So who's paying the attorneys if there's issues that they have to get cleaned up in court? Because day one, you said a lot of words, Robert. I'm not trying to.
The short answer is it would be measure funds.
It's going to come out of the measure. So
Yeah.
every loss or every clarification or every lawsuit is going to come out of this measure. That's another reason why I think it's important. Whether that's now or whatever that is, I think that stuff needs to get cleaned up before we pass the measure. That's
Okay.
my last comment. Thank you.
I just want to say something. Back in 22, this measure was, that measure was brought up in December. And it was rushed back then too. And it failed. And that's because we started late. Here we were on time, but it kept getting delayed. Not because we didn't want to do our part. There were so many distractions. There was so much chaos going on, you know, that was not being supported. So that delayed our process. If we continue to delay it, that measure is going to fail anyway. Because if you wait after January, I'm not sure if you were there at the county meeting where the elections clerk went over the timeline, and he said now. He didn't say later. So if we wait till later, then might as well not put nothing on the ballot because we're not going to pass it.
What does later mean, Chair?
He said we need to submit whatever's going to be submitted now. Yeah, we're behind. This is why it was supposed to be before us in October. Here we are in December. So if we wait till January, you're only delaying this process and it's not going to be successful because he needs it in the office because it has to go to all the cities for approval. It's a process. And I believe the meeting for the supervisors is what, in July? And it has to be before, in the elections office before then. So we don't have much time. So if we keep kicking the can down the road, I'm sorry, we're not gonna get anywhere.
And
Oh,
to
but
add
get-
some,
get-
to
get-
add some of
Can I
that,
just say one thing,
Sure.
Co-Chair? I agree, we need to be expedient on this, but at the same time, it needs to be right. It's the tough balance, right? And tonight we're hearing from a lot of folks about the PCI 70. That got me too. You know what our PCI is in Selma? It's 60. It's gonna take millions of bucks to get it to 70. We're not gonna be able to build any new roads with this Measure C funds. It's all gonna be maintenance and repair. I know we don't lose any money, but at the same time, it restricts our ability, our scope
I
of the
think they
Measure
went
C
over
fund.
that. I think, again, we need to clarify that again because
Once again, the measure does not allow new roads. Just be very clear, only
Yeah.
5%. So if you've seen it, so you're talking
5%
about, oh, we're gonna
widening.
maintain and fix, and but I can't build new, you can't build new roads, even if you were 70 like us.
Yeah.
So we can't build roads. I mean, that's what it says clearly. It's only if your roads are already at 65 and you wanted to expand, you can take 5% and use it. That's what it's saying. So the goal of this measure is fix all your roads.
Yep.
Get it to 70, so it's not, so we're like, okay, you know, we like expansion too, but we agree, okay, we'll get it all to 65. And then once we get there, we'll use the 5% if needed. But
I invite you to come to Selma and look at Stillman Street. It's a little creek bed right now that we're trying to widen and expand, and it will really unlock and help solve our traffic problem
Hey,
on Floral.
and that'll
we-
be
we
the
couldn't-
exemption.
Yeah,
Yes.
I want to
That-
add
There's
to
an
that.
The
exemption.
exemption.
I hope. Who's
It
gonna
does.
decide
There is
whether
an
it's
exemption
big
built
guns?
into
for
this, and it dealt with congestion, traffic safety.
Yeah.
If there is a study that says that it's contributing to congestion or it's contributing to safety issue,
Yeah.
then you're able to utilize those funds. But I do want to address the fact that I think what was said earlier about being able to expand roadways, that's exactly why we're in this mess today, is because we've expanded so many roadways in our jurisdictions. We built out 168, we built out a lot of these freeways, but the people are now saying, why didn't you use that money to fix roads? That's why you have a PCI of 60. Ours was at 60 here back in 2021, and now it's at 64 because we made some investment of American Rescue Funds. It doesn't take much to build a PCI unless you're dealing with streets that are like in the 30s and 40s. Then it takes a lot of money to do that. Getting a road from 60 to 70 is not much money.
Right.
I just want to address the issue of why we need to go back, why we need to go back. If we have been engaged and looking at this with our staff and what's going on, you should come here with exactly what we need to change so we can look at it. The staff is already, I mean, legal is already saying it's legal, like Mayor Dyer said. So it's already legal. There's that new issue of, okay, it may be where it'll be litigious, but okay, that's something we're gonna have to work out with regards to what it is. And that, I think that's workable amongst where we're gonna go moving forward. So in other words, unless we don't have anything else to change, where else? I mean, it's
I don't
pretty
see-
clear.
Yeah.
And it's pretty thorough.
Don't see major
That's why I'm
things
trying to
there
go,
needs to be
where
changed.
else do we need looking at or detail or picking out a word or not? And so unless we hear that
I
from each
think-
other,
Yeah.
it's difficult to discuss of
I think there's just
Elaine.
a little bit more clarity that because there's still that confusion. And just putting some language in there that will make it a little clearer, that's probably what's needed. Go ahead.
I agree with Mayor Bong and Mayor Dyer. I think, this is a document that is legal. And if we recall correctly, Supervisor, we were there at the meeting, right, Fresno County meeting, and they said, the county clerk said that they need to be hearing about these 12 months in advance, at least. So the timeline, the clock is ticking. I mean, if you really want to come here and say something that needs to be changed and push it out one more month, then we can, right? It's possible, but that's not the objective. We need to get moving because everybody's going to lose. And our communities are going to get behind and behind and behind. And for the past 20 years, nobody cared about that.
Yeah, and I want to say this, not to be, threatening or anything of that nature, but if I have to wait for this body for several more months to approve a measure that we're going to put onto a ballot that then puts us behind to where we then fail as a jurisdiction. I've abdicated my role as a mayor, and I'm going to have to consider moving forward with something on my own with the council, like some of these jurisdictions have already done. I think some of you already have. Mendota has your own road tax. But my preference is to work with this group, and I have put in personally hundreds of hours on this measure, as I know some of the other folks have. And if we're going to let a perfect measure get in the way of a good measure, I think we got to rethink that. I appreciate, and maybe I have the benefit of the fact that I've reviewed every single word in these guidelines, that I've had the privilege of having Scott Mosier and Greg Barfield from Public Works as well as from our transit meet with me, go over these, make sure we're not missing anything. And not just for the benefit of the city of Fresno, but quite frankly, for the benefit of every jurisdiction. And so we've tried to do that. And I always respect attorneys' opinions, but they are just that, an opinion. And, but we at some point as a board have to move forward and do what we need to do and to get busy. We got a lot of work to do over the next 11 months now before this thing is put on the ballot, and to go to every single jurisdiction to get approval, to be able to go to the Board of Supervisors twice, and then to come back to FCTA we got a lot of work to do. And as Mayor Beltran said, the last time we got behind the 8 ball, even though we moved at lightning speed, and we still didn't get there. So that's just my thought, and whatever we can do to accelerate and expedite that, even if we got to stay here till 2 a.m. to work out the differences, I think we need to do it.
And remember, we were out there until midnight, that meeting in 22. So.
Can I just, yeah, I agree with a lot of what's said. I mean, lawyers offer their opinion. We're paying this gentleman to offer the opinion that he does. He does say that he has concerns with the guidelines, that they're so prescriptive, that and inconsistency in the documents, that's what he said. I wrote it down, that it creates some enforcement issues. And his concern was that FCTA would be turned into an enforcement agency in terms of reviewing this. Is that what you said, sir?
I think that's a good summary.
Okay.
Yes.
So it does raise some concerns. Yes, it is late. Part of why it's late is I think this body created a steering committee with a lot of people in it, which still slowed things down. And here we are. It's the first time that we're hearing about legal analyzing this document, but we're supposed to be voting on it today. He's raising concerns, and because of the concerns about the timeline, people are saying, yeah, it's a legal document, but we're going to ignore the concerns that he raises so we can keep this thing moving forward. I think that's short-sighted. I'm happy to do whatever the body wants to do. I'm not supportive of the document. I think that's clear, and we can talk about that down the road. But I wouldn't be so quick to just ignore what he's saying, because he does raise some valid concerns. And I think it's unwise that the board is willing to move forward, ignore those. You raised some concerns that I have also about where you said about the housing and how's that related to the transportation. That's mentioned in the 65%. We have a lot of concerns about some of that. So that he raises valid concerns. He's being paid to do that. I think it's unwise just to move forward without addressing those concerns. And I think the concerns he raises, honestly, are not going to require much time to change. Turning guidelines into goals doesn't seem like a lengthy period.
I see your point, Supervisor, but I don't think we can put together a document that has zero risk for, I mean, you can sue anybody for anything.
Oh, of course. Agreed.
So if we're looking for that type of document, we're probably never going to get there.
Yeah,
we gotta get moving and get going.
I don't think that's, I mean, we've all been in government. We've all seen how we get sued over nothing. So I understand that. I just think it's unwise to ignore some of the valid concerns he's raising, but
sure.
I just want to clarify something. The FCTA is the enforcer. They are the ones that enforce the measure, the current measure as well, and the future one. So that is the reason and the purpose for that agency. So if we don't have any other
I don't know if
questions-
FCTA is an enforcement agency,
Yes.
Well, I don't know if, they certainly don't have any legal powers to enforce anything.
No, but they restrict the funding. And the reason I say
Right.
that is because
True.
if cities are not in compliance with their audits,
Yeah.
they hold back on their funding until they are current. So that is currently happening now with this measure. So they are in the enforcement. I don't know if there's any other comments or questions, so that way I can try to open it up now to the public.
I do have a question for the attorney. You know, we get hundreds of millions of dollars in grants in our city, either from the state or federal government. And those grants have built-in milestones. They're very prescriptive. I wish they were goals, but they're not. They're taxpayer dollars that we receive. And we have to comply with the goals that were established within that grant. They're not just goals, they are absolutely prescriptive. So how is it different in this particular arena? Now, at the state or the federal level, they have audit committees. At this body, FCTA is contracts out with audit committees or an auditor to make sure that we're spending those dollars in a manner in which we say we are. So I'm just trying to understand the difference between the two.
Well, I think the difference between the two is simply that this document hasn't gone through the extensive review that federal guidelines go through. So, and I'm not questioning any agency's ability to follow rules here. I believe you all follow very complex rules. My concern is, and not trying to criticize the document. I just am concerned that the requirements aren't as clear as they could be, and that could lead to disputes.
You know, a good point that you made, Dyer, because it's true with the grants. You know, if we don't follow their guidelines and we use it and go against what the guidelines are, we have to pay that money back. So if they are strict, and these are guidelines that are not, sometimes they're developed by the same agency or the cities put their guidelines together. So it's not that they go through this major process to get these guidelines together. I know this because City of Parlier has put guidelines together on their CDBG on what they want to see for that, and that gets approved by the state or the federal. Once it's done and then it's approved, then we have to comply with those guidelines. So it's not a major process that it goes through. And it's approved by the council and it doesn't go through the public or anything. So, and if we don't comply with those guidelines, then we would have to pay our own money back that we used and we put the guidelines together. So I like Dyer said, we respect your opinion, and I think I agree. I think that we need to keep moving forward because we already know what happened in 22. No one's in a rush. It went through a lengthy process. It wasn't like in a month or two. We went through so many meetings, and the steering committee put a lot of hours into this. So it's not a rushed measure. And I think you had a question, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, so, I think that the good, healthy discussion actually, brings a lot of fruit to the tree here because, like, I didn't understand exactly what was going on. A lot of us don't have the benefit of sitting on all of the committees and putting in all of the time that everybody else has. So I think the ability for us to be in this environment with those that have is great. And I think that takes away a lot of concern when we listen to what the intent is and how it got to there. And so most of my concerns, the only concern that I still have is about the DUC area for how much the county is going to spend on that, because county money is already, reduced. So here's my question. And I like the idea of what Dyer said. Hey, if we have to stay here till 2 a.m. to get it done. Now, granted, I'm not suggesting, but what I'm saying is we should open it up to where if people want changes, they bring them to the table. Because this is the first real time that we're seeing the final document. And I can tell you, besides that one change, I mean, I also agree that nothing's going to be perfect. you know, but I would like to have those that want changes made to be able to be heard on those changes. So then we can move forward. So if we want to make the change, we can make it. We can move forward with those changes made. That way people get a chance to say something. And like I said before, I really do appreciate everyone's perspective. And a lot of their perspective helps me because then I can have a better understanding of it. So thank you so much.
Is there?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think he's right on point. So perhaps it'd be good to be able to, I mean, we have our attorney who's reviewed the document and already started making some examples, but maybe I'm okay with going one by one. And if there's
Yeah.
somebody on this body that has, you know, I have a concern too that I'm going to bring forward on how, whether or not vehicles can be utilized. And I have some language for that. But I think this is the appropriate body to do that this evening.
So did, you,
Either
yeah,
line by line, or if nobody has a concern with the line,
then,
I think, you know, we skipped that one. But I think our attorney has gone by, obviously, line by line. And maybe he has some low-hanging fruit we can address this evening.
yeah, I think that would be good.
Mayor Dyer, but why don't we just go through and just state our concerns, because
I'm for that. You mean as a body?
Yeah,
Right.
and so
If
just
I
state your
may-
concern, it might be quicker, because they may already answer some of the concerns that other jurisdictions have.
I think, yeah,
Yeah.
let's do that.
And so that way we don't have to go through every, yeah.
Hey, this is Matthew from Reedley. You know, I'm not a lawyer. Stephen, Jeremy, thanks for being here. Our board brought you here for your opinion. And I'm not a lawyer. I would take it with a lot of weight. I'm also not a city manager, engineer, public works. I depend on my staff, who are excellent in the city of Reedley, to go through this 36-page document of the implementing guidelines, because I don't understand all of it. It's broken down into layman's terms as well enough for me to understand, but I depend very much on my staff, which I would assume, I'm not going to speak for anybody, but I'm going to guess that there's many of us around this table here that is likely it's probably similar. We don't have the ability. We're not Fresno, Clovis, the county that have maybe more resources. But I need my staff. I need my expertise. I need Nicole to talk to me to go through it. Furthermore, TTC and PAC, they advised against this. It wasn't a hard advise against, but it was pretty close from what I remember. What I was advised after that from my staff is that we're happy to see a lot of the stuff that was talked about Friday morning to be in this document tonight. But there was no communication, at least to read of that. I think it would have been better for us to understand, or at least get notified of the changes of that coming tonight. But and so I bet you I would guess that if this document came before TTC and PAC right now, that vote would likely be probably a lot different because of those changes. But those advisors, which again I depend on, from at least myself, they weren't notified of those changes tonight as we sit here tonight. I hear you, Jerry, going down line by line with Stephen and Jeremy. But I'm going to advise against it. I'd like to speak for others as well, but at least for me, because I need my staff to help me. I'm not an engineer. I don't have this language. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what's going to be brought up for litigation and such. With respect, Alma, I did hear also at the county supervisor, and one thing I didn't hear James Coos, our election clerk, say is we have to pass this right now, or else it's not going to qualify.
It's just
I know that there's strong comments by him, like they should have started back in October, whatever, right? But I didn't hear him say that. I understand probably the biggest weight that I heard tonight so far is what Jerry said, and I know he said it wasn't necessarily a threat, but it's hard to not take it as at least similar to that. And so that's probably the biggest thing that I've heard so far tonight. The city of Reedley, we need it just like Fireball, San Joaquin, everybody else, right? There's lots of holes in it, as has been discussed for the last week or so, but for the most part, it's palatable and we're okay with it for the most part. But for the most part, what I would ask is, we have these technical folks that we are not at this table. I'm not, nobody else is around here are technical folks, lawyers, city managers, engineers, public works. Why don't we consider
They have
tabling
been
this?
they met with Robert. Robert got their input and had made some adjustments. That's why I'm not sure if Nicole hasn't brought that to your attention, but they brought up some concerns. He worked on the things that he
I'm aware of the meeting.
that he was able to adjust. So, Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, what I would suggest if it's amenable to the board is we can go back to the PowerPoint and we can go back through the kind of the hot button items that were identified in the PowerPoint. And as opposed to going line by line, but we can go perhaps page by page. And we can refer from the PowerPoint to the guidelines to show you where the language is and how that was adjusted specifically, if you would like to do it that way.
Should we go with the ones that are the concerns? Because if we go through because not every item is a concern, right? Like, let's just focus on the ones, which the 65%, I believe that was the main one.
Yeah.
And was there another one? And the one that Nathan had, is there any other ones? Because I do still have to open it up for the
just
public.
think that
as
we
well.
need to-
Well, Madam Chair, this is
Yes.
the attorney. I know there are specific policy or technical concerns that were brought up today, but there's language changes which are, oops, sorry, my Siri just went off. But there are specific changes elsewhere in the document. I'll tell you, it's going to be hard to catch all of them in a long session, but we can try to do the best we can. But we're going to have to go at least page by page, if you plan to do that.
Okay,
How-
so
How many folks here, how many mayors here or Board of Soups have met with your technical folks, your experts? I brought mine tonight because I don't want to make some, I'm not a public works guy either or a transit guy, certainly not an attorney, but I brought them with me tonight and said, hey, you may be here till midnight because we're going to work through, if you have any concerns. Actually, they have zero concerns. The only one I had was one that I'll bring up, but I'm prepared to do it.
I think this. Do you want to go up there?
No,
May-
I'm just gonna I'll just start. This is the concern Clovis has, and we just need clarification with regards to we
notes.
understand?
Yeah, start with the page, please.
Well, it's interpretation, so there's no page, but with regards to the 5% that we can't use for new roads, so we understand. But after a new road has come in, can we maintain it with Measure C funds? That's our question.
Okay, so
And so we're not gonna use it to build a new road, but
But
once
it's
it comes in, can we maintain it with Measure C funds? Or is it only the current roads that we have as the passage? So my staff just wanted clarification on that.
From what I remember, it's also for maintaining that new road.
Yeah, just
Right,
I can't
so
build the new road, but I can maintain the.
Yes,
Then we're
Measure
good.
C.
And I
Right.
think it's going to be different for each jurisdiction because in Fresno, we require a CFD, a Community Facilities District, for any new development that occurs. And when new roads are built, and I believe Clovis is the same way, then that CFD pays for any future maintenance of that road. So I'm sure every jurisdiction is being a little different on that, but
Probably
I'd
for
love
the
to hear
smaller
staff
the
too.
smaller communities, it can be maintained for the.
So-
community.
And so that's, as long as it's a good, Clovis is good with the measure and the allocations as presented in the guidelines.
I can answer. And I can answer that question very specifically. If you turn to page 16, the very bottom of the page, that is one of the technical fixes that we elected to make. You'll see that it says funds shall not be used for street or roadway construction in new growth areas or new town development not already in existence as of the passage of this measure. So that what it does not do is prohibit maintenance.
It does not prohibit
Correct.
maintenance.
That is how that
Sometimes
was
just a
addressed.
little changes on the wording helps a lot, So, yeah, it's mainly the clarification if they need it more.
Question, when we bring this back to our cities and our cities get a look at this and they propose changes, are we able to bring this back for another shot and
That would
make
be it.
changes?
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
no,
I would
why,
be-
why are we even taking it to the cities then? What are they actually? Review it.
Yeah, it's a
Procedural.
procedural step that is defined in statute and the intent. So that's the next step after tonight is assuming that this is approved. The next step would be we'd be going out to each jurisdiction with a resolution of support. At that point, the vote is either up or down.
Yeah. And that's how we did it in 22 as well.
Okay, and the majority has to be up from each, from the.
A majority of the jurisdiction, so it has to go through the Board of Supervisors.
Weighted average.
And a well, the majority it's the Board of Supervisors plus a majority of the jurisdictions representing a majority of the population.
Can I suggest that we start with the county first?
We can certainly do that. That's been suggested already, yeah.
Yeah. So I think, was there any other questions or so,
I think
okay.
I think the way that you
Okay, we'll
started is-
start this way because I really do want to get their input as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I think Nathan, you're next.
Yeah, I just wanted to discuss maybe changing the DUC allocation.
This is
Maybe
page
we should-
17.
Yeah.
Top third or so of the page. It's highlighted. All of these should be highlighted, or most of them. Page 17. Yep. So the language that he's referring to, it says the county of Fresno is annually required to spend a minimum of 12 and up to 15% of its local allocation in identified disadvantaged communities as defined by Government Code 65302.10.
Yeah, I just think that's a large lift. It's a lot more than what it was. And like, I think the county's probably already going to be struggling. And we do want to make sure that our county roads get repaired. And I'm not saying that a lot of these, some of the disadvantaged ones shouldn't get repaired too, but we do need to be aware that there are a lot of communities that pop up out of nowhere. Like literally they just pop up out of nowhere. And I don't know, I don't have the details behind this. So maybe I'm looking for what, has there been studies or anything done to define like how much it should be? Has anyone come up with those numbers? Or is this like, how did you get to the numbers of 12 and 15%?
That came from the steering committee.
Because there was no study. The county has never had a study done before. Correct?
We do have a handout to show what the different percentages would look like in terms of dollar amounts. So we'll provide that now.
Yeah, I would have to say, for this particular one with the county of Fresno, and this increase from 12 and up to 15%, I think it's a good allocation. I think that there's a lot of unincorporated communities and including those that do pop up, regardless of when they are created or they pop up, they still need that support. And I think that for the county of Fresno to have that put aside, that 12 to 15% would mean the world to Los Olvidados, to Biola, to Tranquility, to a lot of these unincorporated cities that are usually overlooked.
Yeah, somehow they need to be accountable. I mean, we have look at Cantua. You go out there in Cantua, there's no sidewalks, the roads are bad, and it's just all around bad. Nobody does anything.
Yeah, and I think that this is a really good opportunity for us who are elected officials who are overseeing incorporated cities to really lend a hand to our neighbors, to those that are unincorporated, and to also, bring their voices to the table. I think that it's been a long time coming. I think it's deserving. And so for this one, I'll have to stand with it.
So to provide a little bit of context, just for the handout that was just given, what you'll see in here is a range of different percentages and the dollar amounts that would generate or be required to be used in the DUCs. The context behind this particular requirement is that originally the requirement was pegged at $5 million annually. That was determined to be problematic because of the timing in the measure. There's more money that comes in in the last 10 years of the measure than there is in the first 20. On an annual basis, it like doubles after year 20 on an annual basis. And so it was determined that it was probably better to have a percentage identified. Our examination based on the number of road miles, if you look at the road miles and the population of the DUCs that were identified, we peg that number at 7%. But then the committee changed that to 12 to 15. And so that was how that evolved.
So who represents these unincorporated cities?
I think we all
'cause
should.
I mean, like Kalinga, for instance, and the reason I'm asking this is because we have areas outside of Kalinga that's right next to Avenel. It's right next to Kings County, but yet their address on it, because of the paper, says it's Kalinga. So they've contacted the city of Kalinga and they'd said, hey, we need we need a road that goes up from point A to point B. But when you kind of look at how these areas formed, there wasn't really a rhyme or reason of how this became. And I just see that there should be, like, I just don't agree with the fact you can just go set up in an area and then just ask for road money. I'm not saying that this can apply to everyone. There's lots of unincorporated areas that do, but so like in the draft, wasn't it like 7%? What was the change?
In the first iteration was set at $5 million annually. The second iteration was 7%, and the final iteration is set at 12 to 15%.
So is there a reason for them? Like, what was there a study done, or was there a reason that we come up with this money?
That came from the steering committee.
Okay, but I hear you say it came from a steering committee, but was there an actual study done that said that this much money should be spent?
Not to my knowledge.
No.
There's a county.
Well, I can also
Public
speak
Works?
on this. There wasn't a study specifically, but there is a recognition, essentially, that a lot of these communities, because there isn't a set designation amount of money, that the county could then not invest in those communities. So the steering committee suggested that there be this allocation to ensure that those 13,000 population, the 36 communities received some funding in terms of none, because at this point it's at the county's discretion.
So from what I understand, the county already has a list of approved roads that are in unincorporated areas that they have agreed to maintain. And my only thought on this is that if these places can pop up, and like I said, I'm not talking about pre-existing places, but what I'm saying is this is a lot of money. And, this could be a lot of stuff spent on areas. Okay, so here's another thing. What's going to define what area gets the money? Is that going to be done by the county? Do they get to decide?
Yeah, the county would decide that.
Okay. And I guess I can defer to the county supervisor. We have him here. What does he think about those numbers?
Let me pass it to Mohammed. He's our with Public Works at the county.
Good evening, Mohammed Alimi, Public Works and Planning. So to answer your question, we haven't done any study as far as what the needs are. But if you look at the formula that the guidelines have come up with, 80% population, 20% road miles, based on that formula, these docks, they have less than 2% of county roads, 56 miles throughout all the 36 unincorporated communities. So less than 2% of road miles and less than 8% of population. So based on that 80-20 formula, it equates to 6.8% of county's allocation. That's why we had agreed to the 7%. So anything beyond that is basically taking money from other residents in the county, which is gonna put the county at a disadvantage. We realize that the needs are significant in some of these communities, but we have really done significant amount of work in Biola, in Kawa, right now we have project in Kawa, we have project in El Porvenir, in Crothers, in Tranquility, in Riverdale, we just awarded this multi-million-dollar project. So saying that these communities have been ignored is really false.
This is the information I wanted. This is why I wanted to hear this from someone who's done some research on this, because I want to make sure that we're making decisions based on information and data that makes sense, not just throwing money at a situation, because we've learned in the past that's not a good idea. So
also just keep in mind, there's never been a study to actually be able to compare. So that's the problem too. The county never did that.
Because they don't care.
So had they done a study, then that's when you have enough information to actually come up with a percentage that makes a lot more sense. Right now, it doesn't make sense to most because there's nothing to compare it to.
except for the amount of people that there are, the amount of roads that exist, and the information that he just said right now, which to me makes sense. And that's kind of why I asked the question, because I didn't see information attached to this. And so, like, that's why I want to know, like, what information came to the steering committee that says that we need to spend, 12 to 15%. I forget his name, and I apologize, but he had information that says that why it should be around 7. And so then they're saying, hey, we have but I just want to know, like, the idea of, hey, there's a need, to me, that just doesn't justify an action. Just because there's a need, we have to have solid information to back that up, to say why we're going to why are we going to dedicate? Because it doesn't say, and here's another thing that I had suggested, that it didn't say required, right? Because that's one of my things with this. It says required, but we don't have an assessment based on this.
They would have to do one. That's one of the things that I did ask Robert, that if they can make those adjustments at the 10-year review, they would have to have those assessments so that they can show that there's that need is not there. But I understand what you're saying about the pop-ups, right? But not all of them are like that.
No.
I know there's a lot of areas in Parlier that they're part of the county that do need a lot of attention, that they pretty much have dirt roads. And they've been there for years and years and years, unless the city annexes. That's the only way they get the road maintenance that they need. Otherwise, it's just stays the same since I've been there. It's been like that probably more than 30 years.
Well, there are some of these communities that don't have any county maintained roads on them. So in those communities, county is really not even responsible to maintain their roads. So, and having said that, the Regional Active Transportation Plan did study the needs in some of these unincorporated communities. So that has been identified. But what hasn't been identified is the feasibility. Some of these communities, there is really no right of way to even put sidewalks. But if we have to, basically do any kind of improvement, we have to take away from their parking, because they have street parking. So those are the challenges we have. There's so much encroachments even in the narrow county right of way. So you have to do a feasibility study and a needs assessment in order to even go after grants to do those kind of work. So there is really no funding allocated to do that unless we get some earmark money, which we have done. We have gone for earmarks in Crowders, in Easton. So the needs are significant. The funding is short, and by the allocation that the steering committee has put together and your board has approved, you are even cutting county's allocation short by changing the formula. So you expect the county to do more with less funding, and that's not reasonable.
So maybe as a bridge, it could be put in to say, to spend a minimum of 7 up to 12 or 15, whatever that number is, based on studies done by the county, so that we actually know what we're spending the money on. That way what they would do is they'd create that criteria.
Or you can commit more money to roads other than 65%, which is what you're doing. And I think what he said, you're asking the county to do more with less money.
Chair, I just would like
Mayor Pacheco, we're
I
coming
want
around this way.
a process clarification. I'm looking for a process clarification. I was under the impression that this conversation was going to be language clarification. We've already voted on allocations. And so I feel like we're wasting time talking about the percentages that have already been voted on. And so I'd just like to get back to what we need to be doing this evening, which is language clarification, if that is correct.
For
in
the
my understanding.
guidelines.
So just really quick, it references Government Code 65302.10. Is that already a mandated amount? Because it says that.
No,
identifies-
that code simply identifies, defines what a disadvantaged unincorporated community is.
Okay. So, again, I would be in favor of what Mayor from Kalinga is stating, and again, there has to be studies, and I just would like to, comment back to our supervisor representative here. You guys had a lot of money before, and there was no feasibility study and things done.
So that's why I think, again, it's changed and this body has decided that 65% for roads is adequate. So with that being said, I would be in favor of, again, making that minimum requirement to 7 to either 12 or 15, but with the contingency that they do get a feasibility study done. Thank you.
The guidelines, we're still on the guidelines.
Yeah.
And next.
Right, so we're just doing.
Guidelines. Clarification on guidelines.
Yep, I'm good. I actually had a question, but Mayor Vaughn asked it in advance, and so I have my answer. So I'm good.
Thank you.
And I guess I just want to clarify that we're not, I wasn't talking about changing overall allocations. I was talking about within the guidelines, changing the percentages that are kind of started in a draft and then moved forward. And I just want to be clear that exactly what the Mayor Fireball said. I'd like to start at 7 as a minimum and then up to, and then also having those studies in there.
Once we get done with everything, just keep that in mind so
Okay.
that we can
No problem.
bring it up.
I-
Okay, I think, Dyer?
Yeah, I have a clarifying question, Robert, on the use of vehicles. Do we clarify that with our team? Is it the language on, I think it's on page 18 and it goes into page 19 where it talks about, I think there was some confusion in the steering committee in terms of what vehicles could or could not be used.
Right, so
Under Measure C. And part of the reason I say this is that we have vehicles that are pulling trailers or vehicles that are being used to support Measure C. And so it'd be, my preference to be able to use Measure C to fund those, even if it's on a prorated type basis. Yeah, whatever use of that vehicle is, say it's being used 30% of the time for Measure C, that 30% of Measure C could support that vehicle. I just didn't know whether or not that was changed.
Right. So the answer is, as we've looked into this, is there is provision in the current strategic implementation plan, or SIP, that allows for equipment purchases or, to be used, Measure C funds to be used for equipment. It does not specifically allow for vehicles. There's nothing that I can find that specifies vehicles. So part of the question is, do vehicles come under the umbrella of equipment? And that has been interpreted historically as no. However, what could potentially, your suggestion is, it would certainly be a good compromise in that it would not allow for vehicle purchases, but there could be an allocation, or in a lease situation, there could be an allocation. You're using this vehicle for, partially for Measure C related projects, partially for unrelated. So you're simply allocating the costs or the associated with that vehicle use by percentage to Measure C or not.
Yeah, for example, we, for surveyors and for engineers,
Correct.
they'll utilize that vehicle to go out and do Measure C projects, but you can't use it because it's not.
Right now right now. And so one potential compromise there would be to do it on an allocated basis.
Yes.
Right.
And my request would be to retain, be able to retain vehicles for surveyors and engineers and as an eligible expenditure and to do it if you want to do it on a prorated basis, if whatever that looks like, 30% of your vehicle or 40%, because sometimes you're using the same vehicle to do Measure C, and then you may go to the next project and maybe it's SB1 project.
And we agree with what Mayor Dyer has stated there. So the City of Clovis would like that added as well, or to include that.
That's good. Carmen?
Okay, so the only clarification that I'm looking for is for program requirements on page 26. And it just says each agency maintains authority over its own route structure, service design, and operational decisions with coordination intended to enhance mobility. So does that give the city of Kerman just more
Where on the page are you?
26.
26
No, where?
program requirements 1?
Program require, oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Coordinate public transportation services where feasible. Is that what each agency maintains? Okay, so that's referring to public transportation agencies.
Okay, the public transportation.
Right, this is under the public transportation category. So it's, when they say each agency, it's referring to public transportation agencies.
Got you.
Yeah.
All right. And so that was that one. And then I think the other question that I had has already been, yeah, it already got answered. So that's all the clarification that I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, I got to go back for me. I need, for something like this, especially with a fluid conversation like this, that's going to get this technical. I need my team, truly. And I don't have them with me. I wasn't told that we were going to be kind of going like this. So I don't want to get too far out over my skis. I'm listening to what you guys are saying, your concerns. I appreciate them. But without my technical team, I can't, I don't have anything to clarify at this point.
All right, it's just you. You have any questions? Any
I
comments?
just want to say that the city of Mendota is fully supportive of the Measure C renewal implemented guidelines and plan that we have right now. I do support Mayor Dyer's, comment on the vehicles. If they're used for Measure C work, then prorated cost will be used towards that. So, thank you.
Okay. Marco?
You know what, the only, I concur with, Mayor from Kiefer. We don't have the technical support here, and I would like, to have that before this meeting, because I don't know where it's gonna go.
You could borrow Mayor Dyer.
No, no. The thing is that the mayor's, your staff should have had that conversation. They've been part of this process, but we can't bring them all here. Yeah.
But, well, anyway, I'm new to this, like,
No, that's fine.
And, we have a new manager and
Yeah.
all that, so it was hard.
No, I bet. No, I understand.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
No.
I mean, Orange County, we need all the help we can get.
Yeah.
Much.
Right.
But I do understand that we need to push this forward. I do understand. that.
Yeah. No, thank you. We appreciate that. And
Trust me,
so,
we took care of Orange Cove.
yeah. Oh, yeah. And
With the
and
the initial 400,000 plus all the other goodies.
yeah. And what we'll do is we'll make sure that because the same thing with my staff. And that's because, I'm always asking, I ask Robert too, but, it's new because you weren't part of the measure before, so you won't know exactly what's going on. But, this is something that, your city manager, he was involved and he's experienced, so he knows exactly, he was part of that measure back then too. So
Yeah,
thank you.
We just would have had the conversation.
Yeah. Okay, Reedy? No?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So what,
City of San Joaquin supports the measure.
wait, thank you.
What I said earlier, the
The
guideline,
65%.
the PCI
Yeah.
is 65.
Yeah.
It's too high. It's going to cost Selma a lot to get to that, and I'm sure it's going to cost a lot of other communities a lot of money to get to that. I think it's too restrictive. On the safe routes to school, there's a study that is sort of strange. It compares the fatalities from 10 years to the fatalities of after 10 years. I didn't quite get the metrics that they're using for the safe routes to school funding. I think that's confusing. I don't know why it's in there. I know in a community like Selma, we really benefited. We got, I think, 550,000 for the safe routes to school. I'm seeing people in the subcommittee here, or the originator of the concept. So, I mean, that's a great part of the funding, but the details in that, the requirements that they're making for that to be, that funding to be bestowed are strange, and I don't see how they apply to making the routes actually safer. Just getting back just to one more time, page 16. Existing, so the way it reads is no more than 5% of existing neighborhood streets and roads maintenance program funds may be spent on road expansion or capacity projects. Certain exemptions, here we're talking about the exemptions again. Bringing up Stillman, our road, which is a little trickle of a road right now, which needs expansion, and the council just approved a 600 affordable housing unit complex for that area, which will mandate that, which won't be completely paid for by the developer. So this is kind of in progress right now in Selma. Forgive me for being city specific. but I was elected by the voters of
Yeah.
Selma, and I'm representing Selma
Selma.
as well as the county. So it says, certain exemptions for road expansion or capacity enhancing projects are allowed when they involve significant safety or mobility benefits as supported by traffic studies
Mm-hmm.
that demonstrate reductions in fatalities and serious injuries for all road users. Okay, this is floral. Traffic doesn't even go fast enough to have accidents of that. It's so clogged and congested there. I want to make sure that this couldn't be so narrowly construed or interpreted that there would have the improvements that Selma could use if we do somehow get to the 65 could be used or could be denied because there are no fatalities on Floral.
And I did ask Robert because Orange Cove has a similar situation with a road that's near the school. Yeah, and I had brought that up because the mayor and also Mayor Pro Tem brought it up where it's a safety concern. The bus goes through that area. So I talked to Robert about making sure that those studies, if there's no fatalities, but it's still a safety concern because you.
Huge safety concern.
So I think just clearing up that language is probably, if it's a safety concern, especially with students and people, you know, that you don't want to have a fatal, wait till you have a fatality to.
We don't want to wait for that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's just the language again, and we can just put more clarification on that.
Right. So just to be, again, to be 100% on this, crystal clear. Right now, widenings generally are limited to 5% of the measure, but that 5% may not be accessed until each street and road within the jurisdiction reaches the 65% PCI threshold. Okay, so the exemptions that it mentions are very specific. The dedicated public transit lane, the dedicated and protected class 1 or class 4, safety motivated turn lane or intersection improvements. Those are the only exemptions that are allowed outside of reaching that 65%.
So you don't get to 65, you have 4 possibilities for accessing
The
these
5%.
funds.
Correct.
5% of your Measure C funds for
Correct.
the
Widening,
project.
right. Widening is not among those exemptions, just a general widening. Now, if it's a widening to allow for one of these projects, that is allowed. That is, but it's.
For
those are the-
affordable housing or
But that's-
housing projects.
But that is the limit of the exemptions. I just want to be crystal clear about that because that,
Especially for the ones that have the safety concern, I think we need to make sure that we have that language in there because we don't need to wait for someone to, you know, have a fatality there and then fix the
We
problem.
all have those clogged roads and we need help with those. And
No,
that would
and-
really help. And not all of us are going to get to 65, unfortunately. We've got other things we have to spend our money on, you know, like salaries for, you know, the people who work for the city and public safety. So we have other things as well as roads, and we're going to try to get there. We'd love to be at 70 or 75, and this will help us. But this language is just a little it's too restricted.
And I've been asking for like to put that in there where it has where if you have a study that supports, that's another way of getting that.
Can that study be done in-house by our public works department?
so the studies, so what it specifies is that these exemptions that are specified can be accessed via studies that, that demonstrate significant safety or mobility benefits that demonstrate reductions in fatalities or serious injuries for all road users. So not just the intent is not just motorists. So the benefits have to go beyond the motoring public. It would also have to include bicyclists, pedestrians, public transit users, and the like.
Okay, and then since we're on the topic, no new roads. What about a road that doesn't have a sidewalk? Does that constitute a new roadway, or is that something that would be permissible under the measure if there is no sidewalk alongside the road?
So, okay, can you repeat it? What about a road that does not have a sidewalk? What's that?
Mhm.
Right. would
about it?
Measure C be available to put a new sidewalk in?
A sidewalk, yes, a sidewalk's not considered a widening. A sidewalk that falls under eligible expenses for, under the active transportation. That is certainly allowable.
So,
If you have if what you're talking about is simply a sidewalk installation, yes, that would be allowable.
and if the road is widened in the process of putting in a new sidewalk, that would not be fundable.
The dollars, the Measure C dollars could not be used for the widening, but they could be used for the sidewalk
Correct.
portion of that project, is how that would work. You would have to have other funds to do the widening, but you could use Measure dollars to do the sidewalk portion of that project.
Okay.
County?
Are you done?
I'm done. Thank you. Thank you.
I met with our staff, got a couple of points that they're concerned about. Mr. Leamy, you can talk about them when you have the public comment. I'll mention a few. The allocation plan gives too much money to public transportation. I've been clear about that. Not enough to local and regional roads. County residents, Fresno and Clovis city residents say fixing and maintaining roads is their top priority, with reducing congestion a close second. Public transportation is not a high priority for them, yet it's going to receive 29 to 30% of the measure when only accounting for about 2% of the trips countywide. Number two, regional projects have historically been matched at an 8-to-1 ratio. Lowering the regional connectivity to 4% will result in the loss of as much as $5 billion.
Supervisor, we need to go with the guidelines. We've already gone over that with the allocations, percentages.
Well, maybe you voted on the allocation. I may give you such strong talking points, you want to switch.
It's already been approved, though. I mean, right now, we're just working.
Can you not, if everybody wanted to turn this to 75%, could this body vote to give it 75%? What do you mean not right now? Yes, they could.
Because it's
Measure C is on the agenda, guidelines and this implementation plan.
guidelines. Yes, it is.
Yeah, I would counsel against that at this point, given making changes to the allocations, since those are not specific. Those were discussed at the last meeting. So I think you're asking for a challenge if you do that. At this meeting, a later meeting, fine.
Yeah, am I allowed to speak on this or am I not, lawyer?
I think it's DBK.
You can express your comments. I don't think we should have discussion amongst all the board members on this, but you want to, what you've said so far is fine.
Okay, I will offer just two more points on the allocation, then get to the implementation guidelines. As I was saying, regional projects have historically been matched at an 8-to-1 ratio. We're lowering it to 4%, going to result in a loss of as much as $5 billion in matching funds. People may not care about that, but matching funds come with regional projects. And lastly, Fresno County takes care of about twice as many roads as the city of Fresno, but is only getting half the money to fix them. As far as the implementation guidelines, the guidelines require the county to build 36 miles of Class 1 trails, but guidelines say rural and recreational trails cannot use the Measure C money. Local agencies should not be required to build projects with no allocated funding. Two, as the region grows, busy roads need to be widened to avoid and reduce traffic congestion and improve safety. These guidelines limit road expansion to only 5% of local road allocation and say all roads must be in good condition before any widening can happen. There's not enough funding in the entire proposed measure to meet that standard. Measure C, along with matching funds and developer fees, is the main source of funding for capacity increasing projects. These limits make it impossible to improve traffic flow, do not meet the needs of a growing region where most people drive to work and other destinations. Number three, the guidelines regarding disadvantaged community. They require the county to spend 12 to 15% of its local roads allocation on disadvantaged unincorporated communities. But these areas have very few roads, less than 2%, and a small share of the population, 8%. Based on the funding formula, they should receive about 7% of the county's allocation. Also, the guidelines say the county must spend this amount every year, which is not realistic. Transportation projects take many years to complete. The spending should be an allocation that is calculated as an average over a 5-year period, not year by year. And lastly, the guidelines require all major roads must include bike features. The guidelines should not mandate the location of the bike features. Rather, each agency's adopted active transportation plan should continue to be relied upon for making these improvements. And lastly, we have $1.3 billion in deferred streets in the city of Fresno, $1.6 billion of deferred maintenance in the county of Fresno. Instead of coming up with a plan and guidelines, which will deal with this issue, we have a Measure C plan guidelines designed to try to force people out of their cars and use buses, bicycles, scooters, electric vehicles. We commit 30% of Measure C to public transportation. As I said, though, 2% are using it. So these guidelines force the construction of bike lanes with nearly every major street, which will result with streets and roads looking like the Tower District, frankly confusing and difficult to navigate. So we also have in here that there should be 120 miles of bike lanes and even enable low-income housing. I'm not sure how housing, which you raised, gets involved in Measure C transportation. So the majority of people are not going to support this. Not going to support these guidelines. They want their streets and roads fixed. They don't want to have, their focus is not on public transportation. It's not on riding scooters and bikes. It's getting their streets fixed. And it was said that Clovis and others support this measure. I'm not sure that the entire city of Clovis has voted on this project, so I'm not sure how we can make declarations that the city of Clovis supports this. I know you do, Mayor, but there's 4 other people. I know one that does in the audience, but there's 3 other people. So we don't support this for the allocation and the guidelines as I've mentioned.
I have a quick comment just to say, I know your feelings, Supervisor, but in 2022, they also voted down the measure that had high allocations on regional stuff. So I don't know if your comments are actually accurate to what they're saying.
Oh, they are accurate, and they're going to vote this measure down too when they know all the details in it, because the shuck and jiving that's associated with this is not what they're going to support. And I can assure you this is going to fail. And if they do a private measure with either a city or someone else, I suspect that will fail too when they understand what's involved.
Well, we don't know that for sure.
No, we don't. That's why we have a vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we're done here with the board, I'm going to close it for the board and open it for the public. And once the public's done, we'll come bring it back for a vote and no more further discussion. 2 minutes, please, per person. Thank you. I know we don't have a clock thing. He's gonna use his clock.
Is it playing? I don't know. We can do it on. Yes, I need
And if we can please ask if you're going to speak on these, please stand up right there, in line right there.
Yeah, please line up for any of the speakers that wish to address the board.
Ready? Yes, Eliseo Gamino, President of Central Valley Leadership Roundtable. I've been to several meetings here. I know the steering committee has spent a lot of hours, a lot of energy, just like Mayor Dyer mentioned. There's a lot of work. And a lot of you who are here have been here month after month. I mean, a decision needs to be made. It comes a time where you have to take responsibility. I mean, we can ask questions and take a whole year, 3 years, and not find a perfect Measure C. The voters are ready to support an inclusive Measure C that's going to take care of the entire county, not just specific cities that have been used to getting allocated monies year after year. It's a more inclusive, and we're ready to support this measure with the voters and go out there. But I see some stalling. I see some tedious questions that should have been handled prior. And we got to make tough decisions. Some of us don't have an engineering degree. We don't have a legal degree. But we have to trust the process. That's what we talked about. And I see a reluctancy to make decisions. And I hope this board supports this inclusive measure. And like I said, I'm ready to support it and talk to the voters. But if there's folks that want to see this fail, I really hope that you reconsider your stance. It's not a perfect Measure C, but it's an acceptable one. So thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Amber Krall. I am a professor at Fresno State, and I served as a member of the Measure C Steering Committee. I'm a Fresno County Island resident and Supervisor District 2. I am a mother of 2 young children who were born in Fresno, and when we moved to California and settled in Fresno almost a decade ago, we were absolutely certain that this is where we wanted to stay. I still feel that way today. So for me, putting in the countless hours on school and work nights to collaborate and cooperate with my fellow committee members from across Fresno County to craft this 30-year plan for Fresno's Measure C tax was worth it, because this is about the future that I want for our communities and for my family. I say that so that you understand my motives, but I also hope you take some time to appreciate how involved and thoughtful and informed this process was. Have you ever before seen a proposal like this come forward with such intensive learning and discussion and such thorough community input? What you are deciding on tonight is a proposal that was crafted with community and so much care. It is a proposal that was designed by true believers in the idea that Fresno deserves better. We are facing a challenging future. Our population is getting older. The age-dependent population is the fastest growing age demographic in the county. Your own projections from last year show this. Our summers are very hot. Our private means of transportation are less affordable. And yes, maintaining our roads is an endless need, and some communities need more than others. We need to plan for and invest in a transportation future that accounts for conditions where private cars can't always be the way to get around. And we need to remedy the unequal conditions that make it difficult for certain communities to rely on any mode of transportation at all. These are the opinions of thousands of Fresno County residents who weighed in, and the steering committee's decisions on these matters are informed by those opinions and all of the other information that we absorbed from experts in the room and the research that we did between meetings.
Time.
Thank you. Please support this.
Good evening. Before I read my prepared remarks, I just want to thank you for an incredibly civil discourse. You all contributed. You really did. And I'm proud to be a voter in Fresno County. You guys, it's just amazing how you're handling a very complex issue. My name is Paul Gibson, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Central Valley Community Foundation. The CVCF Board has submitted a letter to you expressing our support for one county, one plan steering committee's recommended Measure C expenditure plan and implementing guidelines. I appreciate the opportunity to summarize the letter's sentiment. My wife, Joan Eaton, who is here with me tonight, and I have attended 2 Measure C community outreach events, and as of tonight, 3 of your COG meetings. Other CVCF board members have been similarly involved. We are all impressed by how hard many in this room have worked, and by how responsive thousands of our fellow citizens have been when asked what transportation issues matter to them most. We are pleased that in addition to providing unprecedented amount of funding to local streets and roads, the proposed plan ensures a fair and transparent use of tax dollars. It keeps people safe, and it fixes what matters most. I'm old enough to remember in this very space as a young banker when the first Measure C passed in 1986. I believe Mayor Dyer was an FPD sergeant back then, and he knows this too as the Bank of America's main branch. I will say for the record, he's much younger than I am. Which means that some of us here tonight have voted every time Measure C has been on the ballot, and we've seen how important Measure C is to our community. Thank you for your leadership and your willingness to support broader community engagement. The CVCF board and I urge you to support the steering committee's recommended proposal and advance the one county, one plan in 2026.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Kay Burtkin with the League of Women Voters of Fresno. I've said before that we've been engaged with Measure C since 1986, the first iteration of this measure. And I'm happy to say that I served on the steering committee for this proposal. I'd like to address one thing that came up tonight, and that is what was called a prescriptive nature of the guidelines. We had debates on the steering committee, much as you've been having debates here. It's hard to get 30 people to agree on things without there being discussion. And so it did take us a long time to come up with the allocations and the guidelines. But the prescriptive part of these guidelines, the specification of a PCI, the idea that there'd be 5 safe route to school projects in a given period of time. All of that was a considered decision after thinking about the option, which is, okay, we'll allocate $1 million to safe routes to schools, or we'll allocate this amount of money to improve our roads, instead of really looking at what we wanted as an outcome measure. That we could just say, after spending $4 billion over 30 years, we've actually accomplished this many improvement projects, getting kids to school safely. We've actually accomplished bringing our roads up to a good condition. We spent a lot of time on the steering committee talking about PCIs. I had no idea what that was when I went into this. But now I'm pretty well versed in PCI numbers. And our roads, on average, most in the county, are out of kind of fair condition. But that doesn't mean that all of our roads are at a fair condition.
Time.
Many of them are miserable. Anyway, it was a delight to serve on the steering committee, and I'm proud to see you discussing the same issues we did. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good evening. My name is Shermura. I'm with the Youth Leadership Institute. I am a member of the Measure C Renewal Steering Committee. Last week, we just wrapped up what I think might be our final steering committee meeting. And I think, as Robert alluded to earlier, we thought we were going to finish this process in September. But here we are in December. So we've carried on for an additional 2 to 3 months because there was more work to be done, and that needed to be done. Sometimes we met on consecutive weeks. Sometimes meetings only covered a single item, PCI, right, like Kate talked about. Right. Sometimes it meant really absorbing really technical information. I've learned a lot through these process, right? And I think what I'm trying to say is it was long and it was packed information and discussion and debate. And for me, it was worth it. I'm proud of the process, this process, and the product that it produced. It was thorough, it was informed, and it was reached by consensus. This meant that at least 70% of the steering committee members had to agree in order for us to pass an amendment, make a recommendation, etc. Even items that were passionately debated. There are times when the items needed additional amendments before we voted, or it was a second or third vote before we passed, right, the items that are reflected in the IG implementation guidelines and ultimately the measure, right? Throughout this entire process, right, some of our decisions were unanimous or near unanimous, like our guiding principles, right? This became the framework through which I processed the information, the discussions, the debates, and ultimately decisions, right? Of the guiding principles, the 3 that were most important to me, and we've talked about this a lot in our committees: leave no neighborhood behind, fix what matters most, fix the worst first. That means putting our communities with the highest needs first. In addition to these guiding principles and the implementation guidelines, right, ultimately, the measure was informed by thousands of residents through the community process, and they reflect what's most important to our residents, Fresno County. I just want to thank you for what you've done to get us to this point and what you're going to continue to do to move this forward, right? And keeping in mind, right, that what we're doing here, what we're capturing here reflects what's important to Fresno County residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Please don't think on me. Just mention it.
Good evening. My name is Nandeep Singh. I'm a resident of West Fresno, west of 99. I serve very much in the way that you all are deliberating as a school board trustee for Central Unified. But I come today not really in that role, much more actually just kind of sharing as a resident who got to participate in this process. I'm not on the steering committee, but I got to see probably one of the most robust, one of the most engaged processes that allowed so many community members to just express their opinion and their voice. I could definitely say, because I was oftentimes a translator and for Punjabi speaking communities, which is one of the fastest growing, not just in the city of Fresno, but really throughout the whole county. So many, I'm talking from elderly grandparents to young children, got to, for the first time, voice what they wanted to see and the shape that they wanted to see Fresno County take. And so I just wanted to kind of express my appreciation for the steering committee for this historic document that brought so many community voices together, which is no mean task in and of itself, and just want to urge your acceptance of the steering committee's recommendation. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mandeep Jahal. I'm a part of Chakara Movement, and I actually got to sit on and contribute with this as a steering committee member this year. I've been a resident of West Fresno County and West Fresno specifically for the past 30 years. I've been an active voter since I've been able to. I also had the ability to sit on multiple town halls, not just the ones that we hosted for our Punjabi community, but just all over throughout Fresno and Selma and some of the other rural cities to see what other people wanted. And what other residents wanted, not just what I wanted in my home area. So I wanted to say thank you for your guys' support, and I hope we are able to move this measure forward today. Thank you.
Buenas tardes. My name is Nayamin Martinez. I am also another proud member of the steering committee. So I would just want to say that the document that you have in front of you is the result of endless hours of reading and meeting, sitting down with people that maybe I have not had anything in common before, listening to their points of views. So that's what is in front of you. And I think that you decided to be an elected official because you care about your community. That's why I devoted so many hours, because I also care about my community. And my community is not only the place that I call home, which is Clovis, but also the communities where I do my work as an environmental justice leader. I go to these unincorporated communities that also deserve to have roads that are fixed, but they also deserve to have other modes of transportation. And I am a citizen of Clovis, and I'm also in support of public transportation. And that doesn't need to be a big bus. I saw my mother-in-law not having a way to go to doctor's appointment when she was not able to drive. And this is not an isolated case. Thousands of residents in Fresno County need public transportation, microtransit or whatever it is, not a big bus. But that's why not only us in the steering committee, but all the residents of the county that participated in the COG survey or in the meetings that we organized decided that the number 2 priority was public transportation. So please set aside your differences, care about your community, and vote yes in these guidelines. Thank you.
Gloria Hernandez, Mothers Helping Mothers. I want to thank everybody. I was fortunate to sit in as an alternate on the steering committee, but I also came just to watch you all, but also the steering committee. I think everybody's done a great job. We've come a long way. It's unfortunate that some people aren't listening and keep asking the same question. It frustrates me. But I want to share something that happened. I'm a legal observer for Valley Watch, and I was in front of the ICE facility the other day, translating for some of the people watching to see who's taken. One lady came, paid $150 to try to get there at 12 o'clock. It was foggy that day. She was there 5 minutes late and she was turned away. And she cried as she walked away. $150 just to get to an appointment that she wasn't able to go to attend because the security guard turned her away. We shouldn't have to pay $150 just to get to an appointment. We got to be better than that. And, you know, people keep talking about delaying it. I'm ready to walk precincts. I'm ready to go pick up signatures and get this, just like I was ready to vote no on 22. I'm ready to vote yes on a measure that everybody's worked together real hard. And you all have contributed a lot of great ideas. But I want to thank everybody in the audience that has come over and over, the staff that's been very, very good at answering questions. And we got to remember, not everybody thinks like Butterfield. There's a lot of people that want to use Hoovers, They want to use bicycles to get to college. They're looking at 30 years from now. We don't know what it's going to be like. We can't be depending on cars. We can't afford them. We can't afford the insurance. We can't afford the gas. We can't afford the pollution. I live by 180 and 41. I'm on 2 inhalers because of those freeways. So please move forward. As we said from the beginning, we're all going to one
Hi.
county and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Veronica Garibay. I want to speak to a comment that's come up a lot and offer additional context because there's been a lot of discussion, and it's regarding the disadvantaged unincorporated community set aside that you've all brought up. And I'd like to point you to page 17. This is where the language is. It's the yellow highlighted section, the only yellow highlighted section. And I believe that the steering committee debated this topic quite some time. The county provided their input. Staff, Paul and Robert, provided their input during that conversation. And I believe that we got to a point that gives everyone, that gave comfort to the steering committee to support this motion and gives the county the flexibility to address a couple of things. One, disadvantaged unincorporated communities is a definition under state law. That's the reference to government code. State law requires the county and each city actually to identify disadvantaged unincorporated communities in your land use elements of your general plans. It also requires LAFCO to identify disadvantaged unincorporated communities when making reorganization decisions. So the county has already identified 36 communities. So that's where the definition comes from. It's not homes that are popped up somewhere. It's people who have lived in communities for a very, very long time, communities that were established because people, particularly Black and Brown people, were not allowed to live in certain cities and in certain neighborhoods for many, many years. And haphazard planning allowed for the development of these areas. So there's a definition here. It's identifying specific communities. The county has already identified them. Additionally, because there is no need, this is not a drinking water, a wastewater, a housing measure. This is a transportation measure. We're talking about streets and safe streets in disadvantaged unincorporated communities. The county themselves and staff and several of you have noted that these are not a lot of communities, that this is 56 miles total, if I remember Robert's analysis correctly, or Paul's analysis, I'm sorry. And so what we did here, what the steering committee did is, one, say the County of Fresno shall complete a needs feasibility assessment by January 1. That will inform what the actual needs are, what the costs of the needs are.
Hi.
And two, I would like to just clarify this if I can, Chair. Okay, that's 6B is especially important because if you read the language, it says the County of Fresno may spend any remaining funds set aside for disadvantaged unincorporated communities in other county areas once identified needs have been met and the average PCI for all ducts reaches 70 and each local road within each of those communities reaches 65. So as the county has noted, I think Mohammed just noted, if the cost is not that significant, once they reach and address those needs, they can use those funds elsewhere in other counties. So I believe that this provides the flexibility to be able to address those needs for communities that have long been left behind, communities that have been paying into this tax that deserve the investments, and allows the county to use remaining funds once the needs have been addressed in other communities. I'd also like to note that the county is not restricted from using the remaining other funds in their allocation from this measure. They don't have to do this first before they use other money. This is part of it. So I just wanted to offer that context that I believe the language in here, there's reasoning behind it, there's state law behind it, there's a clear definition of which communities we're talking about, and it gives the county the ability to use those dollars in other places once the needs have been met. So it's not tying it to for the whole entire 30 years. Thank you. And thank you for the extra time.
All right. I will keep this brief because most of the speakers before me have already said what I was going to say. Sandra Celedon, I want to echo the thank you and just reiterate what an excellent example this body has set for what it looks like when all of us work together to develop the best possible measure for our county with the most the available data that we have, knowing that we don't have all of the data and it is imperfect. There's been a lot of thoughtful discussion, and I want to recognize that our county does have a lot of challenges, and Measure C is not going to be able to address all of them. It was never intended to, and it is not intended to. But what it will do, if you adopt the guidelines as presented today, is it will fix our local roads. It will improve public transportation, and it will make our community safer for our children. And so I urge you to advance the guidelines as presented. And I also just want to highlight why it's so important that the guidelines are prescriptive. I know that you've heard from your legal, but I was sitting on the other side, and I actually happened to just glance at the most recent audit for the Fresno Rural Transit Agency. And there's one line that actually highlights that I encourage you to read, which says, this is from your auditor, that says, during the audit, we became aware of a matter that is an opportunity for strengthening internal controls and operating efficiency. That's your latest audit. That is a body that should be overseen by the Fresno County Transportation Authority. So we do need to be prescriptive if we're asking taxpayers to give us more of their money. And taxpayers were clear in all of the engagement opportunities that they want to make sure that their dollars are spent in a responsible manner. And all of you as electeds, I'm sure in one way or the other promised when you were running for office that you would ensure that government operated efficiently and that you would work to ensure that their money would be protected. That's what this measure and this plan does. So I urge you to fulfill the promises that you've made to your voters in your respective communities and in this county as a whole. And lastly, I'll close my comments by saying that while I recognize that some of the allocations are a little bit of a here's our best possible assumption, that it didn't just happen on some of the areas that were discussed today. For example, on local roads, by your own data, the total need for maintenance over the next 30 years was identified as $3.4 billion. And that's not just with Measure C, that's all sources of funding. This measure itself allocates $4.8 billion. Why? Because we recognize that there may be some needs that we don't know about. So it's overprescribed by $1 billion. So if we're going to hold this line of thinking that in order to allocate funding for disadvantaged unincorporated communities or any other category that would have to have all the perfect data and it can only be on identified needs, then you should also be reducing your roads allocation by $1 billion. And that wouldn't make any sense because residents have been loud and clear about they want their local roads fixed. So I just urge you to encourage to move this discussion. And I just want to thank you for your time and for all of this process.
Okay. Alrighty, thank you. That was the last speaker and I'm closing the public comment. Oh, okay.
So Mohammed Alimi again with Fresno County. So I wanted to emphasize the need for capacity increasing projects in the county. I've been with the county for 24 years, and since I've joined, I've worked personally on Academy road widening projects, on Friends road widening projects, on Mountain View road widening project. All these projects are an important part of our transportation network. So the allocation plan has basically gutted the regional connectivity. There is really no money to address the need of Caltrans, yet alone the county. So restricting the agencies to only 5% expenditure on capacity increasing is very short-sighted. We are voting on a plan that's supposed to last for 30 years. So with the growth of the region, there is a need for capacity increasing project, and Measure C is the only source of funding. And if we ignore that, I know Mayor Dyer and some people don't like capacity increasing project, but that's the nature of development, and that's the nature of growth for our region. So we cannot ignore that. I serve on the COG TTC. I also serve on the FCTA Technical Advisory Committee. I've been an engineer for over 40 years. So as a technical person, I understand the need of transportation for our region probably better than some of the stakeholders that they all spoke against it. So I urge you to take the advice or the recommendation of the TTC and PAC and do not approve these guidelines hastily. This will be a failure, and none of us really want the measure to fail. but taking action that is not calculated and measured, this measure will fail, if not at the ballot, later on if it's approved. So it needs to be revised, and input from transportation experts needs to be taken into account, and not just by some stakeholders that really don't understand what the needs are. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was the last speaker. I'm closing the public comments and now bringing it back to the board for a vote. And if there's any one that,
Can I just get a clarification on what Mohammed just said? So if a road needs to be, well, it says here expanded for because of safety, they can do that above the 5%, correct? That's the way I understood it. So in other words, if it's already an existing road and you see that it says here that there's a expansion enhancement needed because of public safety, you can use it. It's only if you're creating a new road and expanding that. That's why I read this expansion. So is that correct, Robert? Because
What page are you referring to? Just
the
so I-
5% page.
The 5% rule?
yeah, we're back to that one again.
Okay.
Because we were talking about, our example in Clovis is we have 2-lane road, but there's some homes. So we do need to expand that. It's already inside because it's a safety hazard. Once we acquire, we can make that part fit the road that was already there. And that's sort of how we understood it. Go, yeah, you can do that. It's only if you're going to create new roads outside. And so if it's existing roads,
I think.
Okay, safety is one reason you may want to widen a road like our Millerton Road. You know, there have been many fatalities, but congestion is the main reason you want to widen the road. And that is prohibited under these guidelines.
I just wanted to make sure what
Yes.
the explanation
Mohammed,
is on
if
that.
I'm sorry, my attention was a little divided there, but if I understand Mohammed's point, yes, it is prohibited.
Yes.
Yes,
That is
it is
correct.
prohibited.
Congestion is prohibited. The other
There are three
is
So
that
what-
all the roads.
Maybe we
in
need to
the county-
define what safety is, because that's where the confusion is. We keep saying that if there's a study that shows that there's a safety concern, and then we go ask the question again, then it gets misunderstood again.
There are-
I need you to be, Robert, a little bit more specific.
Well, there are three, the specificity is in the eligible projects. Okay, so there are three eligible projects that are exempted, but only three. So the dedicated public transportation lanes, dedicated and protected Class 1 or Class 4 facilities, safety motivated turn lanes or intersection improvements that protect all road users and that do not impede bicycle or pedestrian facilities. Those are the three exemptions in the language now that would allow for widening to accommodate those exemptions. What you do not see in that is a general widening project. Yes, so if it's a widening associated with an intersection improvement, if it's a widening to allow for a new turn lane, if it's a widening that's to create a Class 1 or Class 4 facility, or a widening to establish a new public transportation lane, those are allowed based on studies that demonstrate a reduction in fatality or serious injuries. That is how the language reads. That is our interpretation. A general widening to accommodate growth is not included.
But the biggest flaw in this provision is
Public comment is over already.
It's the
Uh,
question. He
PCR
asked the question. He's answering the question.
Public comment
I
is
don't want
over.
to just move it along. He's asking an
I just want to
important question that
clarify the
needs to be
point
answered.
that it's not just those three issues. The main issue is requiring a PCI of 65 or above for all the roads for that agency. That's basically killing any kind of capacity increasing project, even for safety.
It's to
Okay,
fix the road.
let's, that was it, that the public comment is closed. So,
I do want to comment on that because I
Yeah.
think what he said at the end is the exemption, even if for safety. Now, if it's just to increase traffic flow because of new development, I think that's
that's the
not
difference.
covered. That's different. So I'm trying to figure out from you, are you talking about increasing a road widening project for the purpose of increasing safety?
Majority of road widenings happen because of congestion. There are some safety projects that may require widening, but I would say 90% of road widenings are because of congestion and traffic flow. We live in an area that we have bad air. So congestion equals bad air. We need to improve traffic flow. Right now, Clovis is growing toward east and toward north. So Shaw Avenue, Herndon Avenue, all those need to connect to another major corridor, which is Academy. And it needs to be required to widen to 4-lane because of congestion issues. So by these provisions, we are eliminating that option.
I think the challenge we face here is, for example, if new development goes into the city of Fresno, as I said earlier, we require the developer to pay for that within that general area. However, if as a result of that development, it causes increased traffic flow 3 miles away or 4 miles away, a developer is not going to pay for that, right?
Right.
But what you're saying is, as a result of that, there is traffic congestion in those particular areas, not necessarily in the neighborhood that's where there's growth.
That's right.
And that's the challenge we face, and I know we face it as well as a city. And so that's something we should probably have a conversation about here. I'm all for the safety fact, but I also know that congestion is something we ought to have a discussion about with that.
And the other important fact is also that Measure C is not solely, I mean, you're not going to use it for expanding. I mean, if like in the city of Mendota, if I have a need to expand or do something, I'm going to go out and look for other monies.
A matching fund or something.
You can still expand. We're not prohibiting the cities to expand.
But you can't use
Just don't
Measure
use
C to
Measure
do
C
that.
money.
You can't use the Measure C funds.
But
if that
I'm free to
congestion's
go and search
caused
for
by-
monies everywhere else.
No, but I
to make
want to
that
just
happen.
clarify that, that's all.
Yeah.
You can't, if there's traffic congestion a mile down the road and the developer's not going to pay, Measure C funds cannot be used the way that you have the guidelines right now.
Can I ask a question of my Public Works Director, Scott Mosier? I don't know, I can put him on the spot here. So if we do have a case like that, what money do we utilize to eliminate traffic congestion, et cetera? Say it's several miles away from a new development.
Members of the board, so for City of Fresno, we do have a development impact fee program. Those cover the growth areas. Those programs, our city council has adopted policies that allow the city in those situations to utilize up to 50% of those development impact fee revenues to put on those projects, because sometimes we do face that where we have developments they do their own frontage, and kind of the cumulative impact of those might be something a couple miles downstream and we've got a bottleneck. But we utilize those funds in the growth area. Occasionally, we do have federal or state grants that'll come in, and those impact fees are key to leverage them. But for City of Fresno, we have not utilized the current Measure C flexible revenues that allow widening. We have not used that for a widening project in at least 15 years.
Okay, so every jurisdiction would have that same ability, but they would need some type of a impact fee, developer impact fee? I know Clovis has one.
That's correct.
You guys have one. I don't know if everyone here, I don't know if the county does or not, Gary, but I just wanted clarification. So we're not relying upon Measure C for any lane widening that occurs as a result of new development, even if it's 2 or 3 miles away. Thank you.
Correct.
That's helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Dyer.
Are we done with the discussion?
It was closed, so it's back to the board, so.
Do you have something, Fong, you want to talk about or no? Because I'm ready to make a motion.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say, the process itself, some have said that we let go of our duty, but it was this body who unanimously voted to create the steering committee. It was this body who voted to say electeds would not be on it. And so it was this body that chose individuals to be on this body in the steering committee. So we made that choice collectively. And so it wasn't that we didn't want to do it. I think a lot of us were asking at the beginning, and Robert, I kept asking you, are these appointments non-electeds? And it was very clear that this body said we didn't want electeds to be on the steering committee. And then after that, I think this body would have accepted anyone if they would have came forward to be on the steering committee. And I think the biggest group that came forward was Tea for All. And so we, acknowledged it, but I think there were other groups. And I think, good or bad, it was unfortunate that we heard from other groups very late in the game. And it was only here in the meeting, and we could have debated those issues a little bit more. As I looked at it and as we worked through it, I think we were also gave ourselves an out. That's why I supported it, that every time the staff would come back and report, we can have input. And every single time during those inputs, we could have been engaging our staff along the way. And after looking at the reports, Paul and Robert, I think you did as best you can to educate the committee from input from the TAC. Input, substantive input. If we look at those PowerPoints, they weren't easy PowerPoints. You were looking at projects, you were looking at steering committee projects, interconnections. You were looking at everything, how it was defined and what it would entail and how much cost it would be. And because of that, these numbers were not just made because, of a ideology, but actually based upon, numbers that can be lived with. And in those 16 meetings and after they came back, the promise is not that it would be 100% roads or 100% transit. The promise is what this measure will become. That's the promise. What will the committee come with to us so we can work together? And now this is our promise. So it's not just it's going to be, 70% transit or it's going to be 80% roads. It's what the committee has come forward with. And they come forward with something that 90% of the people agreed with. And as we looked at the math, it pretty much just took it from regional connectivity because local streets and roads went up 30.4%. Regional connectivity went down 31.4%. And that extra percent went into transit, which didn't change from before. And I've asked of this body, if you want to take away a number, let's say we'll take it from transit, how does FACTS take care of the current, not even new, current what they're doing with FCRTA and with Clovis? And if we can look at that substantively, and our staff, along with Jerry's staff, along with Moses' staff, they looked at those numbers that we need what we've had just to operate. And all it increased was 1%. That's not a huge increase. And then with regional connectivity, yes, that was the plan, the last couple measures. And it's okay if we shift over and say, okay, maybe this is the direction of the community. We're gonna go fix our roads. And some of us have better roads, some of us don't have better roads. But once again, I asked the city, okay, 7.3, and we had like 3% last time, 7.3%. Almost double. Which percent would I give back to put into the regional? And I asked that of our council too. What percent? What will we take from? Will we take from our Clovis transit number, or will we take it from our roads and say, here, take our percentage here and put it into regional? And none of us had that answer because none of us could look at our staff who says we need these dollars to operate our transit. We need these dollars to operate the roads and say, we'll take it from Public Works or we'll take it from Clovis Roundup. And so because of that, none of us can say here. And if we can't offer legitimate, concrete numbers where we can go, then it'll be difficult to manipulate some of these numbers. And it's upon us because we're the ones gaining cities. We're the ones who gain. And I know the county thinks they gotten less, but compared to last time, the county got more. And if we really want to be fair, it's where the tax dollars come, they should get more money. But I think Fresno and Clovis, that's where most of the tax dollars come for this, has said we're willing to share. I don't know what percentage of the tax comes in, but we only get 7.3 back. And so the city of Fresno might even put in more. They're only giving 30%. And so really, we thought about the entire county throughout this process. And so we appreciate the work that our representatives have done. I appreciate the work that the rest of the steering committee has done. Our promise is to see what they brought, which was approved 90%, look at it, our chance to tweak it, which we did tonight, and then we'll see if we'll support some of the items that came forward. And with the city of Clovis, we do support Fresno's vehicle addition. We do support, I support Coalinga's, and I would put it as start at 7 and then see what the study says and put it whatever the study says. If not, we can keep it at 12 to 15, but if the study says it's 4, then it can go to 4. So in other words, a minimum 7 and keep it there, and whatever the study says, it adjusts. If not, then if it's 12 to 15, if the study said it's only 3% that the county needs to use to fix it, then it's concrete, it's based on evidence. But I support the 7% because that's how many roads in the population that the staff, COG staff, did a study on initially to get to that 7%. So that's why I feel that it's difficult. And the other reason why I support it is we didn't put that restriction on the cities. Because if you look at a couple bullets down, we made it where it's PCI first and then disadvantaged communities second. And so because of that, I think we were not as consistent. And I understand that there's parts of the county that need it, but we didn't put that on ourselves, which I like because it's just roads are roads. And so PCI is the key. And so, and then the last thing I would say is with safe routes to school, I would ask this change, and that's on page 22. I think this measure is flawed because it says every 10 years, okay, the life of the measure, number of serious injuries and fatalities of students will be assessed for reductions. I think that is flawed. I think the projects are good because sometimes accidents happen even if they're already safe routes to school. And that can bring that number high because of some other accident. It's not because the route is not safe. And if we do this, just because there's an accident that year, and God forbid that there is any, there may already be a safe route. But because of this measure, we would look like we failed every single year because of just a drunk driver or just whatever it is, fog, that is beyond our measure. So I would recommend that we not do that as a measure, but just look at it to help us, study it. But I would take that out because if we don't reduce, it'll be very terrible because some things may happen beyond our control.
If I may, I have two questions of Vong. Number one, I'll start with the last piece. It says every 10 years throughout the life of this measure, numbers of serious injuries and fatalities of students will be assessed for reductions in all school districts. If reductions are not met at each 10-year mark, a plan shall be required for meeting reduction metrics in future years. We do that study every year in the city of Fresno. I think 10 years is too long. And I don't think, in my opinion, I know we have safe routes to school in some areas, and to your point, you may still have fatalities because of students that are crossing the street when they shouldn't, or you got motorists that are speeding, and that's why we put traffic officers in those areas to enforce them. But I do think it is incumbent upon us. Maybe it doesn't have to be spelled out in this measure, but it is. But incumbent upon us, not every 10 years, every year, to look at our schools, to look at our fatals, to look at our collisions, our injury collisions, because one's too many. And that should be something on each and every one of us. And I would hope we're doing that. Maybe we're not. And maybe that's why folks have asked for this to be in there. Yeah. The second thing is, what are we looking for? And I love studies because I think data should dictate how we spend money. But what are we looking for in the disadvantaged unincorporated communities study that would dictate a higher expenditure for roads? Is it to get it to, the study says, in order to get every jurisdiction up to, or every road up to 65 or 70%? And what that's going to take, how much money that's going to take? Is that what we're looking for? I mean, is that, so a feasibility, so you're saying set it at a base minimum of 7%. However, during that feasibility study, if it shows that the roads are at, say, 30 per PCI, how much is it going to take to get that road to what, 65 or 70? Okay, in order to get it to 65, then they put together, they look at all of the miles of roadways. And then you determine, okay, it is going to take 14%. Then we go with what the feasibility study says? Is that what you're saying?
Because I think that's based on a study,
I think that's
which is
what-
more concrete. That's just my thought, yeah.
So the opposite of that, I would imagine somebody on the steering committee may say, no, we want the money allocated now. The question for us is, what happens if we overspend? Right? We don't need that kind of money. Okay.
Okay. I don't think.
Okay, well, are we gonna, so here's what I'll say. You know, we have a steering committee that was established, and grateful for all the work that was done by the steering committee. And 93% of the steering committee approved the allocations that were made. 100% of the steering committee approved the implementation guidelines. The technical committee was presented with the implementation guidelines really the day before and did not have the appropriate time to go through them in its entirety. But based on feedback I got, the vast majority of the guidelines they were okay with, but they didn't feel comfortable enough on a up or down vote to say yes. However, since that time, they have submitted their concerns, and those have been addressed by staff, as I understand. So maybe they didn't vote it up or down, but whatever concerns they have been addressed by staff. And I'll just say this, that this measure does not provide 100% of everything that I would like to see for the city of Fresno. And I'm sure it doesn't for Parlier or Mendota or Orange Cove or Reedley. But neither did the 2022 measure that we were largely involved in as a city in putting together. And, you know, it's just like when I work with our city council and all of you work with your city council, I can guarantee you don't get everything you want. I know I don't. And so we have to find ways to find middle ground, to compromise for the good of the city. And the same holds true, I believe, for this body. And I believe that this measure, to include the allocations as well as the implementation guidelines, although not perfect, it is good. It's a good measure. And I think that we should be supporting it today. And so tonight, I'm prepared to support this measure and to support the changes that have been made this evening. And so it is my, I'd like to move to authorize the chair to sign Resolution 25-52, approving the 2026 Measure C expenditure plan, subject to legal review, and include the changes that have been made this evening. And then also, I'd like to direct staff to work with the County of Fresno to agendize the Measure C expenditure plan and implementing guidelines for consideration at the January 6, 2026 Board of Supervisors meeting.
Okay. That's a motion?
I'll second, but Jerry, can you clarify changes that have been made this evening?
Well, there were
Because,
two, to my understanding,
wanna make
one,
sure.
the one on the vehicles was made this evening to allow vehicles, at least a percentage of those. And I am going to support your what you just said on the feasibility study.
So does that mean that we're gonna start at the 7% and then?
Start at 7%. I am very confident that feasibility study is gonna
Sure.
probably spend up to 15% based on the
And so
conditions of
7 to
those
15
roads.
based on feasibility?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Mayor, if I may, point of clarification. So what I have at the moment, just as placeholder language, allow for vehicle use based on allocation. You can submit additional
Correct,
language.
based on the allocations
Right.
of use
So
on Measure C.
We'll clean that language up, but that's the intent, yes?
Yes.
Correct. Right. Thank you.
So that's the motion.
Motion and second,
A second.
second by Clovis. Roll call vote, please. City of Clovis.
Yes.
City of Clovis.
Yes.
City of Coalinga. City of Firebaugh.
Yes.
Wait,
hold on. Let Kalinga vote.
Yes.
City of Firebaugh.
Yes.
City of Fowler.
Yes.
City of Fresno.
Yes.
City of Huron. City of Kerman.
Yes.
City of Kingsburg.
No.
City of Mendota.
Yes.
City of Orange Cove. City of Parlier.
Yes.
City of Reedley.
No.
City of Sanger. City of San Joaquin.
Yes.
City of Selma.
No.
Fresno County.
No.
Motion passes.
12-4. Did I get the number right?
Yes.
Is that right? Motion passes.
10 to 4.
Pardon me?
10 to 4.
No, the red, what were you asking?
How many voted yes?
10.
10? 10 to 4.
Yeah.
And 2 were not here?
Right.
Right.
Okay. You're not present.
All right. I forgot. We can move on to the next item.
Thank you, board.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, members of the public.
Would have been
For your
all night.
forbearance.
Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
Is that motion to adjourn?
No.
No, it's a
Sorry.
closed session.
Oh,
We
closed
do have
session.
one item.
I think so.
There's-
What is, oh,
No, it's
Still have
special
Caltrans.
meetings. I don't think they did.
Oh, yeah.
we
Cal-
just have one more.
Caltrans.
Caltrans report.
We don't have Caltrans, right?
Caltrans.
That wasn't agendized, was it?
Nothing to report.
There's nothing to, yeah.
I do, but in the interest of time and everybody leaving,
Chair, could I make a recommendation? This gentleman sits here all the time through our whole time. Can we do Caltrans on future? agendas?
First?
Yes.
I think that's a good idea.
I could provide some updates at that point.
Yeah. So we'll change it instead of putting them in the end.
Okay.
Good idea. I second that motion, Supervisor.
Yep.
See, we're on the same page, Mayor.
Hey, and I supported the 7%. My folks are mad over here, but that's all right. They walked out on,
They are, you got that.
but it's the right thing to do.
You're right, feasibility study's gonna show. I think.
I think so too. And if it shows 9%, you spend 9. If it's 11, you spend 11.
Appreciate you guys doing it.
You kidding?
Yeah, okay, we have next item is One Voice, Brenda?
You're really good. You're really, really good. I should say.
Are we, Chair, are we breaking or are we?
No, we have one more item, she's trying to get to that.
We have several more items on the agenda.
Okay.
I know,
Okay.
everybody's taking off now.
Can we announce that? Victor leaving? You leaving?
I know where, no, he's leaving.
This fog?
Victor, yeah.
I gotta go to LA right now.
Okay, guys, we're not done yet. We need to continue. We need all the mayors to make sure that they don't leave because if not, we'll lose quorum. All right, we have the One Voice, Brenda. Okay.
Okay, this, I don't want to keep you on this. You have 2 closed sessions coming. This, I sent an email out to the PAC and the board today with updates on the One Voice effort. We've scheduled the trip from March 22 to the 26th. We signed a contract with the hotel, and the request for priorities submittals is out. Those are due to us by January 15th for review, and then to bring back to the COG board for approval in February. So we just want to alert you to the priorities coming up. Please calendar One Voice. If you're interested in attending, I did check all the conferences I could think of that might be happening at the same time, and we had to work around House and Senate as well, so their calendars. But we do hope you'll participate and submit those regional priorities, regional only, that have some sort of message we can carry to speak to federal agencies, to our congressional leaders, to earmark requests. And keep in mind that it shouldn't be a local project. It needs to be something that the federal government can help with. So, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. But again, I have sent this out to you and your staff today.
Thank you, Brenda. Is there any questions? No? Okay, so then we can move on. Thank you, Brenda. Can we move on to the next item? And
Just items from staff. Just a real quick item from staff. I did want to introduce our newest office assistant, office administrator, Micaiah Bird. I hope you'll welcome her. She joins us tonight at the board meeting for the first time. You'll be seeing a lot of her. And we did have Denise in the room tonight. Denise, as you know, moved on to FCRTA, but we still are in contact with her. She was here tonight to help us out. Brenda, several members of the staff have been supporting Micaiah, but I just wanted to give her a big welcome. So thank you for joining us. Not bad for a first night. Good job. Okay, and that's all we have for staff. First year that in anyone's memory that we've had 12 meetings every month in the year. So, wow.
yeah.
Big deal.
So-
So thank you for your fortitude and your patience. Okay.
We have,
Items from members.
I think they just want to get to the closed session. I think
Okay.
They're anxious to leave.
So
This is story. We have nothing else, and so we can adjourn because there's nothing
close
to.
Well, there may need to be something reported out in closed session, so we're gonna have to come back into open session following closed session.
Okay. Is that the?
okay,
is
but
that
we are now going into closed session, so we're going to mute the mics and have our Zoom